It was dark, and cold, and damp. It was so dark, I shouldn't have even been able to see my hand if I held it an inch in front of my face. Yet, I could see everything as if it were as bright as day. I heard the rushing of an underground river from the walls around me along with thousands of whispers. All whispers directed at me. All saying similar things. The air, they said. The air is rising. They said. He who is of our blood, our heir. They said. Our child. Our heir is rising. They said. I walked through the underground tunnel of soil and stone, the pads of my feet cool and dirtied. Along with the sounds of rushing water, the occasional as well as constant dripping water echoed throughout the tunnel. I reached a hill of rocks piled atop each other as a poorly made staircase. I climbed up, seeing light not far ahead. The rocks were smooth as well as rough and jagged but held no dangerous path. I neared the light. It was warm and welcoming. The whispers never stopped. In fact, they grew in volume and in number. Just as I put my hand out into the light, I woke up. I blinked blankly at my arm currently reached up at the ceiling of my bedroom before letting it fall back to my sheets. My room was bright with streaks of sunlight coming through the blinds over my windows. I sighed and sat up with a yawn. I've been having that very same dream every night for 2 months now and still had no clue what to make of it. Well, actually, the dreams weren't completely the same. But I'm always in the same dark tunnel or a cavern with the tunnel attached. Sometimes there are different pathways in the tunnel but I always end up going straight on in the same direction. At least I think I do. And sometimes I sense things in the shadows around me, moving, following me. Sometimes I even feel something scaly brush against my skin in the dark. But I pay no mind to it. They're nothing scary. But this was the first time I'd reached the end of the ongoing tunnel. What's that about? Anyway, though these dreams should have annoyed me to no end, they didn't. I stretched out the kinks I'd gotten in my sleep and started my morning exercise. Starting with 25 crunches, 30 push-ups on each hand, 20 punches each hand, 20 kicks each leg, and 10 flips front then back. After my morning workout I got out of my t-shirt and sweatpants and went to take a shower, taking my orange jumpsuit with me. I'm happy to say I'm getting clothes of my choice next week. Old Man Hokage had me measured and let me personalize my style of choice last month. Seems I wasn't the only one getting sick and tired of the villagers selling me nothing but that one orange jumpsuit and kicking me out of the shops whenever I tried to buy something different. And since I wasn't a graduate ninja yet, I wasn't allowed to go to the official ninja shops and get the right ninja supplies and clothes. But now that I am, since Mr. Taisho holds nothing against me and actually praises my pranks. Just for that, he's never been one of my many victims. Today was orientation. I'm a real full-fledged ninja now. Finally. Normally, I'd brag and say it was because of my awesome ninja skills, but really, I was lucky. I was lucky that bastard traitor Mizuki targeted me to steal the scroll of sealing last week. I was lucky that this year, Iruka was my teacher and final exam instructor instead of yet another teacher that failed me for what Mizuki revealed to me. There are only a handful of people in the entire village, that aren't Anbu, who truly know how smart I am. The 4 who knew first though were Old Man Hokage, Taisho Daisuke, Nara Shikamaru, and Hayate ni Sensei. The old man practically raised me in his office. Taisho for his observation of my pranks and being one of the few grown-ups that spoke to me like a human being. Shikamaru because he has a 200 IQ point, and after my first week in Ninja Academy I asked him to switch papers with me for a test. Shikamaru being one to want to avoid anything truly troublesome, did so without arguing, and after seeing the corrections done, Shikamaru's paper that I'd written was 100% accurate while my paper that he'd done was 100% failure. Our answers were exactly the same though different when it came to some specifics on answer in your own words questions. We often started playing shogi and conversed afterwards. And last but not least, Hayate ni Sensei for being the one to teach me Kenjutsu since I asked him to when I was 4. Iruka didn't know Bekwase, it was usually Mizuki or another teacher correcting papers and such. Iruka still doesn't know because, like the villagers, he knew me as a hyperactive knucklehead and liked me that way. I'm afraid he'll change his mind once he finds out what I'm really like, and it's not like I can keep it secret forever with all the dangerous and life-threatening missions ninjas have on a regular basis. Everything I show in public is a mask. Look underneath the underneath, ya morons. A ninja is nothing without deceit. And the sacred scroll of sealing? Shadow cloning wasn't the only jutsu in there I mastered, but there are a few I still need to work on. Anyway, back to the dreams. Ever since the dreams started up, my senses have been off and on crazy good without the use of chakra. It's weird, but strangely it feels like it's supposed to happen. Like puberty, sort of. I'm dressed and toweling my hair dry when I go into my kitchen, and my first "good morning" greeting is a foul smell bombarding my nose. I pinch my nostrils together, wincing at the stench, and went over to the fridge. My fridge was pretty empty aside from some butter, a half-empty bag of celery sticks, and a carton of milk. I picked up the milk and found it was almost a week past its expiration date. See what I mean by the crazy senses going off and on? If they were always on, I would have noticed much sooner. As soon as I poured the milk down the drain and threw out the carton, I made some toast with butter and took out a celery stick and left. It would have been easy to get a better breakfast, but I didn't want to be late. A couple minutes walking down the street, I found Konohamaru in his usual obvious ways of hiding. Man, he needs to work on that. "Naruto, fight me," Konohamaru shouted, only to trip over his fence camouflage and faceplant into the dirt. "What are you doing, Konohamaru?" I asked plainly. "That was a slick move," he said, getting up off the ground and looking up at me. "That's why I consider you my rival." "But I didn't really do anything," I said. "Enough talk," he said, jumping to his feet. "Fight me." "Sorry, Konohamaru, but I need to go to orientation today. Maybe next time." "Huh? Orientation?" Konohamaru questioned. "Yep," I said, pointing to me headband. I couldn't help but smile at his big eyes shining in awe. He smiled brightly at me and gave me a salute, shouting, "Right, boss," before running back home. I shook my head with a chuckle and continued my way to the academy. When I got there, I sat down and couldn't stop grinning. Shikamaru was just walking up the stairs when he saw me. "What the, Naruto? What are you doing here?" he asked. "I thought you didn't graduate." "I got lucky," I said with a shrug and a smile. "Huh? Troublesome. Whatever, tell me the details later. Mom wants you over for dinner." "Sure, goal." I look to the second door at the back of the room while Shikamaru rolls his eyes and goes to his seat when we see Sakura and Ino bickering about who got there first. Though the two of them are a little annoying, it's pretty entertaining when they argue. "Huh? Why's Sakura coming over here?" Hi Saku. Move it," Sakura said, shoving me out of my seat without even looking at me. Sasuke. Can I sit next to you?" "Oh, right." I roll my eyes, shaking my head as the girls gathered around arguing about who gets to sit next to Sasuke. Geez, these kunoichi are nothing but simple, stupid, hopeless fangirls. Simple and stupid because I bet that not one of these girls had any real reasons to like Sasuke other than him being top of the class. Hopeless because it was obvious Sasuke had no interest in anything other than being the strongest ninja. I then found myself looking at Hinata. She was the only girl I could see that wasn't a fangirl. Sure, I knew she had a crush on me. I'm not clueless, but she actually tries to be a ninja and works her hardest to do so, while the other kunoichi in my class only try to get Sasuke's attention. At least one girl showed promise. I wince when my ears started ringing because my crazy good hearing decided to turn on just when the screeching fangirls' bickering got louder and higher in pitch. Unable to bear it any longer, I stood up and pushed a random girl from the group in front of me, who happened to be, by pure honest coincidence, Sakura. Hey, Naruto. Sakura started to protest as I pushed her through the crowd. She stopped when I sat her down next to Sasuke and then sat next to her myself. "There, problem solved," I said, placing my chin in hand with my elbow on the desk. Just when the girls were about to harp at me, Iruka-sensei walked in, ordering silence and for the girls to sit. "Thanks, Naruto," Sakura whispered, smiling. I only shrug. I didn't do it for her. My ears were starting to ring and it was giving me a headache. Iruka announced the teams and it was of funny. Team 7 was announced the way we were seated. X, X, X. Normal POV. "Why would I want to have lunch with you?" Sakura said, frowning at Naruto. "Well, we're teammates, so I thought." "Naruto, you're annoying," Sakura said before turning around and hurrying off. Sasuke, where'd you go?" Naruto sighed. "That's what I get for trying to be nice to a fangirl." Naruto just shrugs and heads off to Ichiraku's. Ayame usually makes him a bento since food stores kick him out all the time, and she slightly disapproves of his alternative way of getting food even though he's a ninja. Naruto forgot to pick up his bento this morning. Ayame and her father are two others who knew Naruto's true self. Naruto, there you are. Ayame's father, Tuchi, said. Ayame was worried when you didn't pick up your bento this morning. Sorry, Naruto said, scratching the back of his head, embarrassed. It slipped my mind with graduation and all. I heard, Tuchi said, smiling. Good for you. Thanks. Where's Ayame? She's out on delivery. I got your bento right here. Tuchi said, lifting a 3-bento box tower wrapped in a dark blue and light blue checkered cloth onto the countertop. Hayate also came by to remind you of practice. I guess he knew your head would be up in the clouds today. Oh, thanks, I completely forgot. Naruto grabbed his bento, thanking Tuchi again, and hurried to Training Grounds 13. Iruka had said their new senseis would be picking up their teams 3 hours after lunch, and while these sessions with Hayate went from 3.5 hours to 5.5 hours, he wasn't too worried about showing up late. Naruto had booked it to Training Grounds 13 and found Gecko Hayate waiting. Naruto put his bento down and bowed to Hayate. Good morning, Naruto. The sickly-looking Junin said with a cough. Good morning, Ni-sensei. Naruto said, straightening up. Eat half cough of your bento for cough now. Hayate said. We'll take a break and cough, you can finish it, cough then. Hi sensei. Flashback. 4-year-old Naruto had been wandering around after all the parents at the playground took their kids home when he showed up. He found himself closing in on Training Grounds 13 when he heard shouts, clanging, swishes, and some cursing. He hid himself and peeked through the bushes to see a group of Anbu without their masks and 2 of them practicing Kenjutsu. One was a really tall guy with long black hair and white eyes. A Hyuga. The other was shorter, had short brown hair and dark circles under his eyes. The shorter guy was obviously winning. A second later, the Hyuga was unarmed, back to the ground, and the tip of the shorter guy's blade to his neck. Hyuga didn't look too happy as the other Anbu clapped and 2 came over to help him up. As soon as he was on his feet, he shoved the 2 away from him and stormed off. Well, I guess that's enough for today. Another Anbu said. Let's get a drink, on me. The others seemed to like the sound of that and started to leave. One of the female Anbu with long purple hair turned to the shorter guy, that one, and asked, You coming, Hayate? No, I think I'm going to practice a bit more and go home. Maybe next time, Yugao. Yugao shrugged and followed the others. Just as he said, Hayate practiced a bit more. After practicing a kata for about 10 minutes, he paused and faced the bushes Naruto was still hiding in. You can come out now, Hayate said. Thinking the young Anbu would get mad to find it was him hiding, Naruto debated running before hesitantly coming out of the bushes, looking down at the ground. You're Naruto, right? Hayate asked. Carefully, Naruto nodded without looking up. Why are you here? You should be more careful. Naruto carefully nodded again. How long have you been hiding there? Hayate asked curiously. Little beefao, you beat that Hyuga guy. Naruto said, looking up at Hayate with his eyes without moving his head from facing down. And no one sensed him? Hayate thought curiously. The only thing that gave him away a minute ago was a very light flicker of his chakra. Do you know anything about chakra, Naruto? Naruto seemed to think for a moment before asking, It's Inuji White? Ninjas use it. Hayate nodded. Anything else? Naruto shook his head. Hayate nodded again. That's to be expected, but it's impressive he even knows what chakra is at his age. Hokage-sama probably told him, but for him to actually understand it and hide his chakra's signature without realizing it. I wonder, why were you hiding? I thought you wouldn't let me watch, if I knew it was you? Hayate guessed. Naruto nodded sadly. Do you like Kenjutsu, Naruto? Naruto nodded happily. My favorite books and stories Hokage Gigi tells me have Kenjutsu masters in them. But I never seen Kenjutsu beefao. If you got a teacher, you wouldn't have to just watch but participate. Naruto bit his lip before hesitantly asking with big hope-filled eyes. Would you teach me? Hayate blinked in surprise before smiling and nodded. Sure. Flashback end. Clang. Naruto gritted his teeth at the strength of Hayate's vertical swing he just blocked before jumping back and taking a defensive stance. Hayate nodded, ending their session for the day as the student and teacher bowed to one another. Very good, Naruto. Hayate praised. A couple more lessons and you will have mastered everything I have to teach you in Kenjutsu. Naruto smiled out of breath and nodded in thanks, handing over the spare sword Hayate had brought. I'll see you to Maro at KOF 3. Hayate said before shining away. Naruto went over to where the empty bento boxes, his shirt, and a jacket lay and redressed before heading off to Training Grounds 7 and the Memorial Stone. X. Naruto POV. I paused in step when I reached the Memorial Stone after I see this masked gray-haired Junin standing in front of it already. He gave me a glance before going back to staring at the stone. I didn't say anything to him. For all I knew, he could have been one of the many that saw me as the fox. I put the bento boxes down and put my hands together in prayer. I'm a genin now, Dad. Wish me luck. I prayed with a smile before bowing to the stone and heading back to Ichiraku's to drop off the bento boxes. I wasn't stupid. I knew who my father was. Hell, how can I not? I look just like him for Kami's sake. After I dropped off the bento boxes, I found out I was late meeting my new sensei and ran to the academy as fast as I could with my weights still on. I've been wearing weights since I was 6. Well, weight seals. I found a book on basic seals in Hokage Gigi's office and a few others from beginners to experts and one really old one for seal masters. I'm nowhere near being a seal master, yet. At least, I don't think so. Anyway, I have a weight seal on each elbow, knee, wrist, ankle, and one on my torso. I don't know how much I'm carrying anymore. Let me think. I know it's a lot. Last time I checked, I had 800 on my torso, and 400 on each elbow, wrist, knee, and ankle seal. 4,000 lbs. I think I'll add another 100 or 2 to my seals sometime tomorrow. I rocket past Training Grounds 4 and a strange shiver runs up and down my spine a couple times just after I hear a shout of, "Guy-sensei," and, "by the springtime of youth." I don't know what the hell that was about and I'm not too sure I want to. Train Grounds 4. Today my students, we are going to. Mito Guy was cut off when someone clad in orange jet by, causing the dirt and wind to pick up behind him and blow into Team Guy, almost knocking them over a second or two later. "Guy-sensei," Lee exclaimed in surprise as he stared after the orange blur of a boy that seemed to have disappeared. "By the springtime of youth," Guy exclaimed in his own surprise. "Lee, I have never seen someone other than you to be so fast. Like a rocket of youth." "Yosh," Lee shouted, punching a fist in the air. "I, under oath of my youth, do hereby swear that I will make the orange rocket my rival. My eternal rival of youth." Guy shed tears of pride. "Lee, Guy-sensei." Lee cheers, crying his own happy tears before they hug. And thus, a rivalry was born. Back to Naruto. I skid to a stop in the hall outside my old classroom door and go past it by about a foot before getting back to the door and opening it in a rush. "Sorry I'm late, sensei." I cut myself off when I see Iruka, Sasuke, and Sakura were the only people in the room. "Ah, there you are, Naruto. I was just about to leave." Iruka said. "Where have you been? You're nearly an hour and a half late." "Oh, just Ichiraku's. I got to talking to old man Tucci and Ayame and I guess I lost track of time." I lied before asking, "Where's our new sensei?" Iruka sighed. "He's even later. I had to get going. I'll see you guys around." With that, Iruka left and the classroom went into an awkward silence. For me at least. Shrugging to myself, I go over and sit on top of a desk and take out one of the storage scrolls in my weapons pouch. The scroll I took out was a mahogany red color and it was my entire library consisting of 283 books. Over the years, my house has been broken into and more when I wasn't there more times than I would like to think. Since the villagers couldn't really do anything to me physically thanks to the old man's law, they always take the damage they wanted to do to me out on my things, if you haven't noticed that already. Hence why I've had to wear orange most of my life growing up, why Ichiraku's is the only place I can go to eat without stealing, among other things. After the third or fourth time my apartment was broken into, I kept my most favorite items in Gigi's office before I learned basic sealing and some a bit more difficult. And I made sure all my scrolls were locked with a blood seal. For example, my library scroll. A scroll this size should normally only be able to fit, at most, 15 to 20 books. However, with the combination of a storage seal, a couple layer seals, a division seal, and a quantity seal, I can put up to 500 to 550 books in one average-sized scroll. I bit my thumb to bleed and opened my library scroll, not even noticing or really caring about my teammates' eyes on me as I unrolled the scroll. There was a small list of categories. Bingo for my collection of bingo books old and new, sealing for any and all books Gigi provided for me on seals, bio for what I have on anatomy and herbs, fiction for anything that's simply entertainment, and other for anything that doesn't fall into the other 4 categories. I placed my hand over, sealing, and focused my chakra into it. There was a puff of smoke and a long list of the books I had under, sealing, in my library appeared. This time I focused my chakra into my index finger and placed it over Strengthening Seals Volume 3. I'd already read it, of course, it is my library, but there's nothing wrong with reading it a 7th or 8th time. There was another puff of smoke and the foot-long, 8-inch wide, 3-inch thick book appeared on the open scroll. Just when I picked it up and was about to read it, Sakura asked, "How did you do that?" "Do what?" I asked, confused. "That, with the scroll," Sakura said, getting easily irritated. "It's just a storage scroll," I said before starting to read. I felt and ignored Sakura's glare before she turned to Sasuke with a huff. Sasuke just snorted and went back to frowning at the chalkboard. He'd never admit that he was curious about something that, dead last, just did. Whatever, not my problem. After another hour of waiting, I put away my book and decided to put a chalkboard eraser between the door and doorway and went back to the desk I'd been sitting on, ignoring Sasuke's, "A Junin isn't going to fall for that," and Sakura's, "Yeah, you're such an idiot," and watched as our new sensei walked in, causing the eraser to fall on his head. "You two were saying?" I mutter as Sakura gets all defensive, saying how she told me not to and I wouldn't listen, while Sasuke was probably thinking the guy couldn't possibly be a Junin. Then I found I recognized the guy. "Hey, you're the guy the first saw at the memorial stone earlier," I exclaimed, pointing at the Junin. Meet me on the roof," the masked Junin said before disappearing in a puff of smoke. Normal POV. The 3 genin sat in front of the Junin, who just suggested telling each other about themselves. "Why don't you go first?" Sakura said. "You know, to give us an example." "Me? Well, I'm Hitaki Kakashi. My likes and dislikes. I don't feel like telling you." "Dreams for the future?" I never really thought about it. "As for hobbies? I have many." Sakura's eye twitched in irritation as she thought, that was pointless. All he told us was his name. "Your turn," Kakashi said. "I'm Haruno Sakura and what I like is. Who I like is." Glances at Sasuke and blushes. "Hobbies. Dreams for the future." Glances at Sasuke and squeals happily. Sasuke ignores all this, resisting the strong urge to roll his eyes. Naruto rolled his eyes and shook his head, thinking, "Good grief." Kakashi sighed, thinking, "Girls her age are more interested in boys than the ninja arts, okay." Next, I'm Uzumaki Naruto. I like to read, train, learning more jutsu, and a few other things. I dislike judgmental and arrogant pricks who just assume things and don't even bother to get their facts straight, and a couple of other things. My hobbies fall under my likes and pulling pranks, and another thing or two. And my dream is more of a lifelong goal, really. I want to surpass my father and those before him. Sasuke raised an eyebrow at this in confusion. Sakura frowned, thinking, what is the idiot saying now? He doesn't have a father. I bet he doesn't even know who his father is and he's just saying that to sound cool. Kakashi couldn't help smiling under his mask. Oh yeah, he's definitely their son. And lastly, my name is Uchiha Sasuke. I have many dislikes and don't particularly like anything. Sakura, who'd sat up in hopes of hearing what he likes in a girl and such, frowned dejectedly at Sasuke's answer. I don't have a dream because I will make it a reality. My ambition is to avenge my clan and kill a certain man. Sasuke, so cool. Sakura mentally gushed. His brother, as expected. Naruto thought. I knew it. Kakashi thought. Okay, now then, Tom ORRW, you'll be taking your final test. Naruto was currently on his way to Shikamaru's after Kakashi had just scared the team with a 66% failure rate before announcing where to meet the next day for the all-or-nothing pass, failed test. Naruto could only sigh on his way to the Naras. Don't eat or you'll puke, he says. Whether that's true or not, I won't be able to do much of anything while I'm hungry and at a loss of energy for not eating. Still, being worked so hard that I puke is even less healthy, sigh. In the words of a certain lazy genius that's my age, this is so troublesome. Naruto heard a faint sneeze and looked up to see he was already at the Naras and knocked. Oh Naruto. Good, you're here, said a woman with her long dark brown hair hanging over her shoulder. Shikaku and Shika-chan are out back playing shogi. You go join them out back and I'll get dinner started. Yes, Yoshino-san. After slipping off his sandals, Naruto headed to the back porch to find Shikamaru cursing under his breath after a somewhat cruel defeat in shogi by his father. Naruto looked over the board and chuckled. You forgot about One Piece and it cost you the game. Something like that can cost you more than a tally on a losing streak on the field, Shikamaru. Yeah, Naruto couldn't help chuckling at his lazy but brilliant friend's reaction. And the blonde couldn't be any more grateful for having such a friend like him and the others. Flashback. Naruto waited nervously in a random training ground for his 3 closest if not only friends his age who, besides Shikamaru, found out who Naruto really was along the years in the academy. It wasn't long until Shikamaru, Choji, and Shino came upon the training grounds. Unlike them, Naruto wanted to wait to wear his headband until orientation. He wanted to keep his graduation secret for now. Hey Naruto, munch, what's up? Choji asked, munching on a bag of chips like usual. Yeah, why'd you call us here? Shikamaru asked, confused. I'm rather curious myself, Shino said monotonely. Naruto bit his lip nervously, unable to bring himself to look any of his friends in the eye. Naruto? Shino questioned. The 3 of them grew confused. Silence was not exactly new once you really got to know Naruto, but they'd never seen him so scared? Was that it? Noting the slight trembling of the blonde's body, they realized, yes, he was scared about something. They'd never even seen the blonde look nervous before. You guys are my friends, right? Naruto asked hesitantly. I can tell you anything and you won't hate me like everyone else, right? Of course not, Choji said, throwing away his empty chip bag. What's this about Naruto? I found out why the villagers and some shinobi. I found out why they treat me like some kind of plague. Naruto said with his eyes still on the ground and shadowed from their view. You did? Shikamaru asked, now curious. Why then? You guys heard about Mizuki-sensei turning out to be a traitor the other night, right? Naruto asked first. Everyone was told he tried to steal the sacred scroll, right? Yeah, Choji said, confused. And you guys remember a while ago how we were all sure my dad's the Yondaime with how much I look like him? Naruto asked. And it'd be kept secret to keep me safe? Yes, Shino said, though he and the other 2 didn't know where Naruto was going with this. Mizuki became a traitor doing 2 things the other night, Naruto said. One was that he tricked me into stealing the sacred scroll for him, saying it was a test that could get enough points to graduate, and it was a test only given to specially chosen students, and bunch of other junk that got me hook, line, and sinker. Naruto clenched his fists. Well, at least he was caught, Choji said. He was a teacher. Even with all the jackasses in the school who fail you purposely, how were you supposed to know? I should've. He was one of the teachers who graded me most of the time, Naruto argued. But that's not the real reason I called you guys out here today. You see, there's this law that no one our age knows about. A decree that was made after the Kyuubi's defeat. A decree to keep this big secret and to keep people from acting on it. Mizuki told me what it was, and it proves why everyone hates me, and at the same time kind of confirms my dad's the Yondaime. If it proves your dad's the Yondaime, why would everyone hate you? Choji asked, confused. Because Dad couldn't kill the Kyuubi, Naruto said. It was just as impossible as everyone was led to believe. So he did the next best thing. He sealed it, but he couldn't seal it just anywhere. He had to seal it into something that would be able to contain all that demon chakra, no matter how big or small of a container. Something he knew he could trust to be strong enough to hold it back. Naruto seemed to be choking on his breath now, and his trembling slightly increased. And knowing that he couldn't even bring himself to make such a sacrifice, how could he expect someone else to sacrifice their only child to keep the Kyuubi at bay? Wait, why, you're saying he? Choji gasped. Oh shit. Shikamaru sighed in disbelief. I see. And everyone sees you as the monster that attacked the village and took away their loved ones, Shino said in understanding. Yeah, Naruto said, finally lifting his head to look at them. Gigi was against me telling you at first, but he understood that you guys are my friends and I wanted to be honest with you. At least I hope we're still friends. What are you talking about? Of course we're still friends, Shikamaru said, like Naruto's idiot mask suddenly became real. You're you, Kyuubi's Kyuubi. I can understand how you might feel. Shino said. All of you are aware how many view the Aburame clan as freaks for containing a hive inside our bodies. The difference is that you were not aware of what you are containing and you don't think like it does or any other such nonsense these people seem to believe. Yeah, you're like a pork bun. Choji declared, getting confused and surprised looks from the other three. Kyuubi's the pork and you're the dough containing it. A pork bun can't be a pork bun without the pork or dough. Wait, no, that's probably a bad example. What about a rice ball? Yeah, Kyuubi's the leeks or salmon or something and you're the rice keeping it inside. A rice ball doesn't have to have something inside it to taste good, right? There was silence, for a moment. Peeved, Naruto and Shikamaru burst out laughing and Choji soon followed while Shino couldn't help chuckling with a smile slightly visible behind the high collar of his jacket. While I like being called a rice ball rather than a demon brat, Gigi says I'm what people call a Jinchuriki. Naruto said, still laughing a bit at Choji's declaration 10 minutes later. Flashback end. Naruto and Shikamaru had started their own game of shogi and an hour and a half later they weren't even halfway through the game when Shikamaru's mother called them for dinner. As they ate, Naruto told them how he graduated for learning and master a Junin level technique. Shikamaru said his sensei was a Suma and that he didn't even give them a final test. Just said they passed and Naruto showed him the bingo book he had with Asuma's file and said Asuma's fair with decisions and dislikes favoritism. Afterwards Naruto told the Naras that his sensei was Sharingan Kakashi the copy nin. Shikaku said, good luck, and that he was going to need it because Kakashi had never passed a single team among the dozens he'd tested thus far. Naruto then got them laughing when he told them he got the masked Junin to fall for a really childish prank with the chalkboard eraser. Well, that just shows that no matter what skills you have, you could fall for even the simplest of tricks when you're not paying full attention. Shikaku said, so Naruto, when are you finally getting rid of that orange suicide suit? Yoshino asked. When my personalized order gets here in a few days. Naruto said happily. Good, Yoshino said with a smile. After dinner, Naruto and Shikamaru went back to their shogi game and it was long after sundown when their game was nearly halfway through. It was nearing midnight when it was 2/3 over. Needless to say, their game was quite hurried when they called in a tie at midnight, seeing as Naruto still had to take the final exam with his team in a few hours. Naruto was walking tiredly down the street heading for his apartment. He was so tired, he was practically sleepwalking. He didn't notice nor did he hear the two ninjas clad in matching green jumpsuits walking towards him on their index fingers. There's nothing like a good midnight exercise, is there, Lee? Guy-sensei said to his student. There is not, Guy-sensei. Lee agreed wholeheartedly. Naruto yawned loudly as he walked between them, catching their undivided attention. They stopped on their index fingers and watched as Naruto just kept on walking, oblivious to their presence. It seems we are not the only ones who think so, Lee. Guy said happily. Lee, however, had his eyes on the orange set of clothes Naruto was wearing before coming to a conclusion. Guy-sensei, he is the orange rocket I swore on my youth to make my eternal rival. He loudly announced as he flipped onto his feet. Guy, also flipping to his feet, then said, then we must introduce ourselves and confirm your rivalry, Lee. The two green jumpsuit-wearing ninjas then hurried to either side of Naruto, who was half asleep by now. Noticing this, Guy smiled brightly, saying, such determination. Sleeping while on a walk at night for a youthful time of exercise. Tell us, what is your name, my youthful orange-clad friend? Yes, I must know the name of my sworn eternal rival, Lee said. Naruto blinked tiredly and the two of them before yawning loudly. Their voices woke him up a bit. Uzumaki. Yawn, Naruto. And yawn, I won't be orange-clad for much longer. Oh, why's that? Guy questioned. The clothes that I want to wear won't be in for a yawn couple more days. Naruto said before tiredly pinching the front of his orange jacket and held it up. These are the only type of clothing the villagers would sell me. Guy nodded, seeing as he knew who this boy was. But he was surprised that this year's dead last was so fast that Lee would want to be his eternal rival of youth. Perhaps there's much more to him than most thought from the academy. Much like Lee, Guy thought. I wonder. Naruto-kun, do you wear weights? Naruto yawned again before tiredly nodding. How often do you wear them? Lee asked curiously, seeing as it didn't seem like the blonde was wearing any. I'm, always wearing my weight seals. Naruto answered. Weight seals? Lee questioned. I see. Incredible. How much are you wearing right now? Guy asked. 4, Yan. 1,000 in all, but I'm planning to add another 100 or 2 in a few hours. Yan, or maybe after my Genin team's final exam. 4,000? The 2 green jumpsuit wearing ninjas mentally exclaimed. That's 1,600 more than mine, Lee's. I'm sleepy. Naruto thought going back to his half asleep while standing state. Yash, Uzumaki Naruto, I wish to start a rivalry with you. Lee announced loudly. We shall provide one another with challenges in our youth to the ends of time. Guy's eyes were starting to water with pride while Naruto unknowingly sealed his fate with his next set of words. Yan, huh? Sorry, you say something? Naruto asked tiredly. There was silence until Lee shouted, Yash. My rival has a hip attitude just as my sensei's eternal rival Kakashi. Kakashi-sensei? Yan, he's not my sensei yet. Yan, I have to pass my exam first. Did you hear that, Lee? Guy exclaimed cheerfully. Your eternal rival is the student of my eternal rival. Yash, eternal rival? Huh? Those are some bushy eyebrows. Naruto yawned again, continuing his way home, oblivious to the green-clad student and teacher behind him crying and hugging in the street. After reaching his apartment, Naruto was out the moment he dropped himself like dead weight onto his bed, not knowing he'd forget all about his newfound rivalry he was only half conscious to discover when he wakes up the next morning. X, beep, 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 click. Naruto sighed tiredly after hitting the snooze button on his alarm clock. Funny how he got an alarm clock months ago, but with masquerading himself as an idiot while in the academy, he never used it till now. He blinked tiredly before sitting up confused. He didn't dream about the tunnel last night. He didn't have a dream at all. What's that about? Naruto thought. Then he just shrugs. Whatever. It's just a dream anyway. Right? Shaking the thoughts from his head, Naruto undressed out of the white t-shirt and blue sweats he didn't remember changing into last night and headed for his bathroom for a quick shower. The cold water from the shower head that hit him first before warming up woke him instantly. A few minutes later, he came out with one towel wrapped around his waist and drying his hair with another when he heard a light tapping on his window. Naruto went over and pulled up the blinds and smiled brightly when on the other side of the glass he found a striped and speckled sparrow with feathers of light and dark shades of brown. 1. Carrying a message from the Hokage's office around his neck. Letting the towel he was using to dry his hair hang over his shoulders, Naruto unlocked and opened his window to get the message and greet his busy little feathery friend. Ibit was a strong little guy to carry what most falcons or messenger hawks are able to carry. Naruto POV. I found Ibit around the time my cavern dreams started. His egg was cracked on the ground but not completely broken. I picked his egg up and the crack in his shell went back together as if it had never been there. Before I could question how it had happened, he hatched. I took care of him and made him a nest in the garden tree I have in the corner of my bedroom until it gets too big to stay indoors. I can talk to Ibit like I can usually talk to Iruka-sensei, only without hiding anything, and he talks to me, sort of. It's not like I can really understand what Ibit says, but I know what he's saying. I can feel it. That's the best way I can describe it. And after being only 2 weeks old, Ibit said he wanted to be the first ever ninja sparrow. So I took him to Hokage Tower and introduced him to the old man. The old man said sparrows only lived for maybe a little over half a year. When all seemed lost, I finally said, if I can be Hokage, Ibit can be a ninja bird. With that, the old man couldn't help smiling and finally caved, saying Ibit had to go through a test and if he passed, he would train as a messenger bird until I became Genin. Ibit, needless to say, passed with flying colors. No pun intended. So if all goes well, today will be Ibit's last day as a messenger bird. I read the message out loud with a sigh. Naruto, I regret to inform you that your clothes will not be in for another month due to Gato Shipping Company's delay. Great, so I'm stuck wearing clothes that scream, here I am. Kill me, for not only another month but during the month I start doing missions if we pass this test. I look at Ibit with a smile as he puffs up and ruffles his feathers in irritation for me. Well, on the bright side, if I pass this last test today, you'll be a ninja bird tomorrow officially. At that, Ibit starts bouncing on his feet excitedly before jumping up and doing loop-de-loops in the air before jet streaming back to Hokage Tower. I shake my head with a laugh before putting on my suicide suit. Getting my ninja gear together, I thought more about what out test could be. I shake my head. There was no point in wondering when I was going to find out. I was already a half an hour late. Damn it, I book it as soon as I grabbed my full bag of ninja gear. Clouds of dirt were right behind me. I stop right when I'm halfway there. I forgot to add weight to my seals. I think the coolest thing about my weight seals is that they don't show up on my skin unless I'm applying chakra or releasing the seals. I added 150 to each ankle, elbow, knee, and wrist weight seal and 300 to my torso. That makes 5,500 lbs. I nod to myself when I feel the weight. I hurry to the training grounds only to find Kakashi-sensei was later than me again. I go over to the memorial stone and pray, "I'm going to be a genin today, Dad. Wish me luck." I smile and bow to the stone before joining my teammates. Sakura frowned at me sadly before seeming to look like she was forcing herself to smile before she finally somewhat accomplished it. What was that about? "Hey Naruto, why are you so late?" she asked, still smiling somewhat awkwardly. I raised an eyebrow. Why does she care? "I was up late last night," I said plainly before lying down in the grass and using my bag as a pillow with my eyes closed. I hear Sasuke say, "HN. It's stupid things like that make you the dead last." I couldn't help myself. I was tired, and what he'd said in that stupid, arrogant "I'm all superior" tone irritated me to no end. What makes me dead last was all the teachers aside from Iruka-sensei failing me without even looking at my papers, brushing me off whenever I actually asked for help, and kicking me out of class for no reason whenever we were learning things together. I open and look at them saying, "But you too wouldn't know that, would you? Not with your precious Sasuke-kun around, or you and your nobody's better than me attitude that will sooner get the both of you killed. I'm gonna sleep off the hours I missed last night until Kakashi-sensei gets here." With that, I turn on my side with my back to them and fall asleep. I woke up with a yawn, blinking my eyes open and look over to see my left hand up holding a shuriken spinning around my index finger half a foot away from my face. I sit up and sniff it before throwing it at Sasuke. It clipped a bit of his hair and made a paper-cut thin slice on his right cheek before hitting the tree 3 yards behind him with a thunk. "There's your shuriken back," I say tonelessly, ignoring his and Sakura's shocked expressions. "I'm surprised you slept through," Sakura screaming I was late and woke up only after catching a shuriken in your sleep. Kakashi-sensei said, "I must have been really sleepy and I can't exactly control reflexes, you know." I say standing up. Kakashi chuckles. "But wait, why are there 2 bells? Unless..." Sakura trailed off. "So you've figured it out?" Kakashi said. "That's right. One of you will be going back to the academy." "Something's fishy," Naruto thought. 2 bells. Why does that sound familiar? Oh right, the old man gave the same test to his students. "Wait a minute. Ready, set, go," Kakashi said. The 3 genin went into hiding, and a couple seconds later, a kunai hit the dirt in front of Kakashi. He jumped back thinking the paper wrapped around the handle was an explosive note. But when it didn't blow up, he took a closer look and picked it up to unwrap the paper from the kunai. I know for a fact that the old man gave this very same test to his students, and if what you said was true, they wouldn't have become the legendary Sannin. Cheeky smiley face. Kakashi chuckles to himself. "You're much smarter than they give you credit for, Naruto." Of course, some of us already knew that. He looked up to see Naruto walk out of the bushes with a wide grin. So you want to test yourself against me, huh? He wants to test himself while at the same time get his teammates to figure it out for themselves. Clever. Okay Naruto, I'll play along. I don't think you grasp the same concept as your teammates. Kakashi said plainly. That's for damn sure. You and me, one-on-one, here and now, fair and square. Naruto said. I want to see what I can do with my real skill. Mizuki was nothing, and the only Junin I've ever fought against was that sorry excuse of a ninja and major closet pervert Ebisu. Hopefully, Sasuke and Sakura will figure it out. They're smart, I know that, but... Kakashi shrugs, crumpling up the note and put it into his weapons pouch before reaching for something else. Naruto stood ready for anything. That is until he nearly fell flat on his face anime style when Kakashi pulled out a book with the title Icha Icha Paradise. What the? Naruto said. What's with the book? I want to see how it ends, obviously. Kakashi said simply. You can attack me now. A vein popped on Naruto's forehead and his eyebrow twitched. Okay, act or not, this guy is irritating. Naruto charged, a fist raised up and back ready to punch only to be blocked without having Kakashi even look up from his book. Damn it, I forgot I added to my weight seals this morning. Naruto mentally cursed. It's not completely novice speed but it's nothing to what I need. Naruto then tried a spinning kick ending with the same result as the punch, except this time Kakashi ducked. Naruto threw another punch only for Kakashi to disappear. 1,000 years of paw. Before anyone could blink, Naruto was suddenly in the air, upside down, holding Kakashi's hands together in the sign with his book, sending a straight-legged kick to Kakashi's face. Kakashi didn't have time to dodge. Sasuke and Sakura stared in shock as Kakashi fell back and Naruto used his face as a launch pad to jump and flip backwards in the air, landing in a ready taijutsu form or a crouch, that neither of the other two genin recognized, behind Kakashi, who was knocked on his backside blinking in surprise. Kakashi looked over his shoulder seeing Naruto looking serious only for the blonde to gain a look of surprise and confusion a second later. How the hell did I do that? Naruto mentally exclaimed without moving out of his ready crouch. Now, Naruto was no taijutsu expert, sure he knew a lot more than he let on, but that move just now wasn't something learned or even taught in Konoha. It was just instinct. Kakashi chuckled standing up and facing Naruto, holding his masked nose that looked a bit crooked now that the blonde genin got a better look at it. It's been years since someone's been able to break my nose. Well done Naruto. Kakashi praised as he moved his crooked nose back in place with a crack. Naruto blushed lightly, standing up out of his crouch. He's praising me for breaking his nose? Kakashi put his book back into his weapons pouch. I won't have much of a chance to read a word if that has decided to surface now. And from what I can tell, Naruto must have added to his weight seals again. Sandame told me how many seals the kid wears but even he doesn't know how much weight Naruto carries. Let's see what you can do. Before the blonde could question him, Naruto nearly had no time to react when saw Kakashi's fist headed for his face and just barely turned sideways dodging the it, only to bend backwards pushing another flying fist upwards with both hands. Naruto's body was practically moving on its own and he let it. Naruto grabbed onto the fist he just dodged, swinging his legs up and wrapped them around Kakashi's outstretched arm. He bent back and pulled Kakashi by the back of the knees. Kakashi almost fell back but stood strong before grabbing Naruto's ankle of the leg that tried to kick his head while Naruto's other leg was still wrapped around Kakashi's other arm. Seeing his chance, Sasuke threw several shuriken and kunai at Kakashi. Naruto's eyes shot wide open at the oncoming flying ninja gear and let go of Kakashi at the last second. In a couple puffs of smoke, the kunai hit the log that replaced Kakashi but Naruto was just gone. Sasuke cursed and hurried to find another hiding place. Damn, that guy just won't let his guard down and I've given away my position. Sasuke thought, and what's with the loser? Just a couple seconds ago, he was the doby he's always been. Now, all of a sudden, he's able to fight toe-to-toe with a Junin? Meanwhile, Naruto was crouching high in the branches of a tree. That was close, Naruto thought. I had Kakashi-sensei trapped for a reason and I know he said to go after him with the intention to kill, but Sasuke was still going a bit too far there. Naruto shook his head, quickly scoping the area. Seeing things were clear of the silver-haired Junin, he hopped out of the tree to the ground. What was that just now? He thought. That taijutsu. It was so different but it felt so natural to me. Naruto shook his head. No, I can think about that later, right now I need to pass this test with my Tiyama. His train of thought broke off when a shudder ran up his spine hearing a loud blood-curdling scream. That sounded like Sakura, Naruto said to himself before running back to the clearing. When he made it to the clearing, he heard the swishing and thudding of a kunai being thrown and missing the target close by. Kakashi-sensei must be fighting Sasuke. Naruto made a couple shadow clones and sent one to Sakura and the other to Sasuke hearing the fight close by come to a stop. Kakashi would probably come looking for him or something again seeing as the others were taken care of. He then took out a kunai in each hand and readied himself, slowly turning in circles so that he wouldn't be caught by surprise. He faced his right when he heard the leaves rustle and swish then stop. They swish and rustle again when Naruto was knocked unconscious with a chop to the back of the neck. Naruto. Naruto. Naruto blinked his eyes open to find Sakura and Sasuke on either side of him while he was tied to the middle wooden post and Kakashi stood in front of the three of them. Damn, Naruto muttered. Glad you finally decided to join us. Kakashi said with a smile. Now that Naruto's awake, I can tell you why I don't see why you three should have to go back to the academy. Kakashi said, still smiling from under his mask. Sakura smiled. You mean? Yes, Kakashi said before frowning. Sasuke and Sakura, you two should just quit being ninja. What? Sakura exclaimed. Why? And what about Naruto? He didn't get a bell. And Sasuke was at least able to touch one. Had Naruto's objective been to actually get a bell in the first place, he might have gotten a bell easily. Kakashi said. Huh? Sakura questioned while Sasuke, who was just scowling, gained a confused look. I mean to say that Naruto is the only one of you three who figured out what this whole thing was about. Then what is it? Sakura shouted irritatedly. Teamwork. Sasuke and Sakura flinched. Naruto wasn't trying to get a bell at all. Kakashi said more calmly. He was providing a distraction for me and getting me in a position where I could do anything so you two could get a bell. Kakashi said, reaching into his weapons pouch and pulled out Naruto's crumpled note. Easy to get info that could be found just looking into your basic history book at the academy. I know for a fact that the old man gave this very same test to his students, and if what you said was true, they wouldn't have become the legendary Sannin. This is the note Naruto attached onto a kunai for me at the beginning of the test. Sure, he was telling me he figured it out. But he was confident his teammates would figure it out as quickly as he did. 2 bells and 3 students. The Sannin being a good example. How do 3 students pass when there are only 2 bells? They set aside their differences and work together. Naruto only had to think about the Sannin to figure it out right off the bat. Kakashi put the note back into his weapons pouch and crossed his arms. Sakura, you didn't even try to get a bell when you thought that's all it took to pass. All you did was worry about Sasuke and look for him when Naruto was right in front of you and you didn't lift a finger to help him. Sakura looked away, embarrassed and ashamed. It looked like Naruto could take care of himself. She thought in a bad attempt to mentally defend herself. And Sasuke? Kakashi said in a more scolding and disappointed tone than he used with Sakura. You only thought the others would get in your way, and when taking your first chance with me, you didn't even think or care if Naruto was hit by the kunai and shuriken aimed at me. You're just lucky Naruto replaced himself with a clone at the last second. Sasuke's scowl turned into surprise. Since when can the Dobi make clones? That reminds me, Kakashi said. Nearing the end of the test, Naruto did one last thing to try and get you two to work together with him, this time on a more direct approach. He made 2 clones and sent them to each of you to tell you about the needed teamwork, most likely, while Naruto himself tried to keep up a distraction in the clearing for me. The only reason those clones didn't reach you is because I knocked Naruto out, dispelling the clones instantly. Kakashi turned his back to them and walked over to the memorial stone, where a couple of bento boxes sat. This is a memorial stone. One that has all the names of the ninja who died in their line of duty. Including my best friend. I want my name there. Kakashi stiffened, feeling a chill go up his spine hearing these words, while Sakura and Sasuke look at Naruto in shock. I can't think of a better way to die. Naruto continued, then fighting for my home or for the people I want to protect most. Kakashi sighed quietly to himself. Kami, he's more like his parents than he realizes. Okay. I'll give you one more chance. X-A-N. Do I really need to tell you the result? X. Still getting used to his added weight, Naruto hurried to the river to meet Hayate. There was a pattern to where they trained and there were 4 different spots. In order from beginning to end of the pattern was atop Hokage Mountain, atop Hokage Tower, Training Grounds 13, and at the river wherein began at the waterfall. Since last time was at Training Grounds 13, this time would be at the river and waterfall. Hayate was waiting with a smile when Naruto showed up, hands on his knees and short of breath. Pass your cough last test? Hayate asked. Naruto only nodded with a bright smile while still trying to get his breath back. Cough add to your cough weight seals again? Naruto only nodded again. How much? 150. To each seal, on my limbs and 300 to my torso. Naruto answered. My goal is 6,000 in all. So after the next time I add to my seals, I won't be adding any more weight for another few years, if ever again. Hayate shook his head with a smile as he handed Naruto a katana. If all goes well in today's lesson, in a week or two I will be teaching you your last lesson rather than tomorrow or the day after, because we'll both be on missions. And when that's done, we'll go to get you your own katana at Taisho's. Naruto couldn't help grinning at that. Hours later, just when the sun was going down, Naruto completed the day's lesson in Kenjutsu and Hayate sent him home. Naruto took a shower and tossed his clothes in the wash before having a small quick dinner of the last of the celery sticks in the fridge and several cups of instant ramen before restocking his food supply. After taking a shower, reading a bit on seals, and putting his clothes in the dryer, he went to bed. The next day, Naruto got dressed and headed for Hokage Tower for his team's first mission. The Hokage sat with Chunin and Junin seated in a half-circle. The Hokage seemed to be trying hard not to smile at Naruto. Before we list off the missions for Genin, I should like to ask Naruto, said the Hokage, how do you feel, taking away one of my best messenger birds? Everyone looked to Naruto in shock, disgust, or anger, while the orange-clad blonde looked up at the ceiling seeming to be in thought for an answer before he looked at the Hokage with a wide smile. Proud, Naruto said. The Hokage chuckled, gaining confused looks from everyone but Naruto, especially when he said, as you should be. Naruto gave his own laugh before whistling in a high pitch and twittery sound through his teeth. Barely a second later, there was a brownish blur that zipped to Naruto, and before said blonde started to wiggle around where he stood, laughing. After about minute or two of this, Naruto straightened up, hooking a finger in the collar of his jacket and stretched out the front to look down into it, smiling. Ibit, get out of there. Naruto laughed. In an instant, a beaked ball of brown feathers flew up out of the collar of Naruto's jacket and looped happily before flying to where the Hokage was seated and perched itself on the desk, revealing the brown feathered blur to be a brown striped and speckled sparrow with a tiny red-clothed Konoha headband around its neck. Ladies and gentlemen, Ibit, the first ninja sparrow. Lord Hokage said with a chuckle when Ibit puffed out his chest and feathers proudly. He'll be in Naruto's care. With the Dobi, that bird will be dead within the hour. Sasuke said, getting a giggle out of Sakura and in smirks from the Chunin and Junin that didn't like the blonde. Only for them to frown when Ibit darted off the desk to Sasuke's left ear and started pecking the heck out of it, switching to the right ear when Sasuke took a couple swipes at him. Naruto, Kakashi, Iruka, and Lord Hokage and the others had to stifle their laughs when Ibit finally stopped and flew into Naruto's hair. Ibit, Naruto said in a scolding tone, even though his smile never left. Give the Teme a break. He still doesn't understand to look underneath the underneath. Ibit ruffled his feathers and snuggled comfortably into Naruto's spikes in response. Naruto could only half-heartedly roll his eyes. On to the mission assignments then. Lord Hokage said quickly. The assignments went from weeding gardens to walking dogs and more chores. Team 7 had several a day for the next week and a half. On the fourth day of the second week after their third mission, Naruto called in. Hey, Kakashi-sensei, I gotta go. Naruto said. Go? Go where? Kakashi questioned. My last lesson with Ni-sensei. Naruto said. Kakashi nodded. I'll make sure you get the pay you earned today. Thanks. After Naruto was gone, Sakura asked, what lessons? And who's Ni-sensei? Kakashi chuckled. Only Naruto calls him that. When he was younger, he fell into the habit of saying, Ni-sensei, when he couldn't decide between calling him, Ni-san, or, sensei. That still doesn't answer my question. Sakura said irritatedly. Kakashi deeply sighed, especially after seeing Sasuke was curious as well. Kenjutsu. Kakashi answered, much to their surprise. Naruto has been an apprentice of a Kenjutsu master in Konoha since he was 4. And if today's his last lesson, it means after today, he'll have mastered everything this Kenjutsu teacher has to teach him. Why didn't he ever say anything? Sakura asked after a moment of shock. Apparently, you forget Naruto's introduction when you three first met me. I dislike judgmental and arrogant pricks who just assume and don't even bother to get their facts straight. He never said anything because no one ever bothered to ask. People just assume Naruto's an idiot. People assume he's a brat. People assume a lot of things about Naruto and don't even care if they're right or wrong. Under the loud, hyperactive idiot is a surefire prodigy that no one cares to notice, who wants to be seen for who he really is and not for who people assume or want to assume he is. He wants to be given that chance. Kakashi went ahead to where they were supposed to have their next D-rank mission, leaving Sasuke and Sakura to their thoughts before they followed a moment later. Naruto ran to Hokage Mountain and into the woods on top of it with Ibit flying beside him. Hayate was waiting and tossed Naruto a katana. Naruto took off his jacket and shirt while Hayate took off his Junin vest. They threw the discarded clothes off to the side and before the vest, jacket, and shirt could hit the ground, they charge. Ibit observed the lesson, perched high on a branch. Flashback. Hayate had only been teaching Naruto Kenjutsu for nearly 2 months and he could already tell Naruto was an ignored prodigy. The 4-year-old blonde was a fast learner and Hayate was sure Naruto would be a master at a young age. When Hayate first started teaching Naruto, the Anbu told the blonde that over the years, he would be teaching Naruto everything he knew about Kenjutsu. Hayate knew nearly a dozen different forms of Kenjutsu, some with different weapons though he preferred katana. Hayate told Naruto he would only teach him as long as he was willing to learn and Naruto replied that he never wanted to stop learning and that he never went back on his word. Hayate could only smile before the lesson started. He said that while Naruto was a faster learner, it was going to take a while for him to master Kenjutsu and surpass his teacher, even if Hayate wouldn't be away on long-term missions. Curious, Naruto asked what he would have to do to be able to surpass Hayate. Hayate paused, seeming surprised before smiling again, saying Naruto would have to learn everything his teacher had to teach him as well as create a new form of Kenjutsu. So this is why you haven't been coming to Anbu Ken practice for a while. Both Hayate and Naruto paused in their stances and looked to see 3 Hyuga branch members standing off to the side and approaching. The one who'd spoken was the same Hyuga Naruto had seen Hayate defeat before, now smiling smugly. Training the demon brat, are you Hayate? Watch your mouth Hyuga, Hayate said surprisingly without a cough. Who I teach is none of your concern. I have to add weak and sidewing you got Yao butt kicked last time. Naruto said to the Hyuga. Hayate couldn't hold in a laugh at the fact that one of the proud, high and mighty, elite Hyuga had just been told off by a 4-year-old. More laughs joined Hayate's and Naruto looked to see more Anbu approaching. 3 of which were still wearing masks while the other 4 were not. Quite the student you have there Hayate, said the dog-masked Anbu with a chuckle. Apprentice actually, Hayate said with a faint cough. Apprentice? You see that much potential? Asked the weasel-masked Anbu. Hayate nodded with a smile. Fast cough learner too. We should probably start practice now in Hayate, although you have an apprentice now, that doesn't make it okay to skip most of our meetings. Yes Captain, can I watch? Naruto asked excitedly. Just when the Hyuga looked like he was about to make a snide remark, the dog-masked Anbu captain said, if you're quiet and stay off to the sidelines. Naruto nodded before zipping over and sitting in front of the bushes he hid in last time with excitement showing in his eyes, earning several chuckles or giggles from most of the Anbu present. It was easy to see how much Naruto liked Kenjutsu from how his eyes never strayed from an Anbu with a sword in hand at practice. And chuckles and giggles arose again when the Anbu captain announced practice over and Naruto exclaimed, it's over already? How long have you been teaching him Hayate? Captain Inu asked. About a** cough 2 months. Hayate answered. The dog-masked Anbu nodded. May I see what he's learned so far? Though it confused Hayate and the others a bit as to why their captain was curious, Hayate agreed. Naruto, come here, Hayate called. Naruto stood and zipped right over asking, more lessons Hayate ni sensei? Hayate lightly blushed when snickers arose from the Anbu present with murmurs of, ni sensei, and, how cute, while Naruto only blinked in confusion. Hayate cleared his throat and said, Naruto, why don't we show Captain Inu what you've learned so far? Okay, flashback end. Naruto rolled in the dirt, dodging a vertical strike before flipping to his feet. Have you come up with a name for your style? Hayate asked as they exchanged blows and blocks. Over the years, Naruto noticed how Hayate never seemed to cough while fighting or when he was in this sort of combat zone Shinobi seemed to go into, but neither he or Hayate could understand why. Sparrow, but I'm starting to think I should give it two names. Naruto answered. Hayate chuckled. I suppose Ibit had something to do with that? Only when I noticed how similar my movements in my style are to the way he flies and such. Naruto said with a smile. Why two names? Sparrow's style can actually be used as a taijutsu as well as a weapons fighting form, and it can be used with several different types of weapons, both made for close and long-range fighting. So I thought maybe I should come up with two different names to differ between the Sparrow-style weapons combat and the Sparrow-style hand-to-hand combat. Ah, clever. Hayate said, understanding. Thanks, but there's no real reason for you to come up with a second name. Hayate said. It's the same fighting style, and you forget that as a ninja, your body itself is a weapon. So how's it coming along so far? Naruto gave a grunt when he cut his hand on his own blade, blocking a vertical slash. I'd still like to come up with a few more blocks, evasions, and strikes before I'd call it finished. With that, Naruto dropped to his back and kicked Hayate over him while striking Hayate's wrist with the blunt side of his katana, forcing Hayate to drop his own. Hayate was about to get up only to find Naruto already had both blades to the Junin's neck. Hayate couldn't help smiling proudly. Well done. Naruto smiled as well before placing both katana in one hand and helping Hayate up. Seeing as you've mastered what I can teach you, it's time to get you a weapon of your own. Hayate said with a light cough. Naruto smiled before going to his shirt and jacket. He slipped his shirt over his head and tied the jacket around his waist while Hayate sealed the katanas in a scroll and put on his Junin vest. A few minutes later, a bell rang over their heads when they walked into the Taisho weapons shop. At the counter they see a man looking to be about old man Hokage's age with short white hair and a matching mustache with a beard attached covering his chin, wearing a pair of circular glasses, a green beanie hat, pale brown shirt with a tea green sleeveless haori over it, gray pants, and old faded black ninja sandals. The old man looked up when heard the bell and smiled brightly. Ah, Hayate and Naruto. Daisuke said, standing from his seat. If you're here together, that must mean I finally have the pleasure to be the one to sell Naruto his chosen weapon or weapons. That you do, Taisho Daisuke, that you do. Naruto said with his own bright smile. Daisuke nodded, the ends of his white mustache curled up with his smile. Do you know your elemental affinity, Naruto? Naruto shook his head. Daisuke reached under the counter and took out a small piece of paper and handed it to Naruto. Concentrate some of your chakra into this affinity paper. Naruto raised an eyebrow, then shrugged, taking the paper and concentrated his chakra into it as instructed. Naruto ended up yanking his hand back and almost making Ibit fall off his head when the paper suddenly split into four before one piece crumpled so tight it was like a paper marble. The second turned to ash when it burst into flame. The third almost dissolved, becoming so soaked, and the last fall to the floor as a pile of dirt. Naruto blinked in surprise but mostly confusion while Hayate and Daisuke could only stare with their jaws dropped. What just happened? Naruto asked, almost afraid after seeing their expressions. Cough, I've never seen anything like that. Hayate said. Neither have I. Daisuke said. Naruto, it seems you have a strong affinity for all the elements. It's rare enough for one to have an affinity for wind in the land of fire. Even more so for one to have more than two elements at Junin level, but all the elements especially at your age. Incredible. Naruto didn't know what to think, so he just nodded. Well, you know what? I have a room in the back with many already made weapons. They're quite different from the ones you see here in the shop. Why don't you have a look around in there and see if anything catches your attention? Naruto shrugged and agreed before Daisuke lead him to the back. The back of the shop was actually split into 3 halls. One hall led to the 2-story blacksmith workshop to make the weapons. Another went to the Taisho family's 4-story home. The third hall, however, led to the basement door. Go have a look for yourself while I talk with Hayate. Daisuke said. Naruto only shrugged before going down the basement stairs. Daisuke turned to Hayate with a serious look. What do you think? I'll have to talk to the Hokage about it. Cough. Hayate said. I thought anyone with a handling for cough all the elements was neutral, so nothing happens to the paper. Usually, that's true. But that's only because, normally, the chakra of the ninja holding it is either unable to settle on 1 or 2 elements because they're too young or possibly because of a sickness and such. But Naruto's chakra seems to settle on all the elements. and to a very powerful degree. Which is why I was completely stumped on what blade or weapons would best suit Naruto. Is that why you had him decide for himself in the back? Hayate asked curiously. Partially. You see, the weapons in the shop here are just your basic ninja gear and chakra blades made for those in tune, so to speak, with their elements. The ones I have in the back downstairs, however, are unique in a much greater sense. From time to time, a ninja, or any one type of warrior really, will come in search of a special weapon, for lack of better words. In my basement, I have many things that those most greedy would call treasure. That is a test in itself. If one takes something worth a very pretty penny, I send them on their way. The other weapons, however, are another story entirely. Naruto POV. I paused in step when I reached the bottom of the stairs. I'm surrounded by every type of weapon known to man in this room that looked to be 2 to 3 times the size of Teisho's shop. Shelves and shelves, tables covered, hooks hanging, and baskets full of every sort of weapon. And wherever I didn't see a weapon, I saw piles of gold and jewels. Medallions, coins, gemstones, everything. And wherever I didn't see weapons or gold, I saw a combination of the two. I shook my head. I wasn't expecting all the gold, but I was there to look for a weapon that suited me. I looked in every direction as I walked deeper into the weaponry room basement. Almost suddenly, I felt this pull, for lack of better words, take me to the far right wall of the room. The pull grew stronger as I walked alongside the wall, scanning the weapons on the shelves or hanging from their hooks. I stopped momentarily. The pull, right now, was coming from the pair of tonfa hanging in an X on the wall. These tonfa, among the many on the wall, were black steel or something with a crimson tint, pointed ends and a ring on the end of their handles. I lifted them from their hooks on the wall, and the moment I touched them, the pull I felt from them was gone. And as soon as the pull I felt from them was gone, in place of the tonfa was a belt for my waist to carry them. I put on the black metal and cloth belt and put the tonfa through the rings on the back of the belt so that they lay against the back of my hips in an X. I walked along the wall once more towards another pull. It didn't take long for me to find them. Hanging on the wall were 3 katanas, 2 hanging vertical by their handguards and the third hanging horizontally above them, seeing as this one had no handguard. The one hanging on the left had a black handguard that looked like a ninja star made of 6 small kunai on one ring, and the handle had a pointed triangular butt end, while the handle itself was wrapped in a crimson cloth. But the blade itself was the darkest pitch black I'd ever seen and shined enough for me to see my reflection in it. The katana on the right had a handguard shaped like 2 stainless steel crescent moons back to back. The butt end of the handle was spherical. The handle itself wrapped in a bluish-purple cloth, and the blade as shining as the sword on the left but color of stainless steel as the handguard. The handguardless sword above them had the handle wrapped in white. The butt end was the average shape on more ordinary katana covered with a cap of gold. The blade was a white gold color with a light bluish tint. One by one, I lift the katanas from their hooks, and as soon as I did, a sheath lay in its place, and, just like before, as soon as I touched them, the pull was gone. The katana with the shuriken-like handguard had a crimson sheath, and in the middle were 2 gold rings 3 inches apart going around the sheath. The twin crescent moon handguarded katana had a dark blue sheath like the red one. The handguardless katana had a white sheath with a black tribal painting of a dragon going around the sheath, the head near the handle of the katana. As soon as I had all the katanas sheathed, over the hooks that had been holding the handguardless katana was 1 dark gray belt that, when I put it on, held all 3 katanas on my left hip. The belt buckle was cool like a 2-piece puzzle that when put together looked like the dragon on the white sheath, only with wings spread out in flight. I stand around for a bit to see if I'd feel the pull again. I didn't, but just when I was about to turn and leave for the stairs, Ibit flew off my head to a basket full of small handheld knives and such, and reached his head in only to pull out 2 small crescent-shaped razors that looked to be able to fold out, with straps by the straps. I picked them up from Ibit's beak to see that they could fold out into wider, slightly curved razors. On a ninja, they looked like they could have strapped onto someone's fingers. But for Ibit, I could put the straps on his wings and they'd fit him perfectly along the edge of his feathers when he opened his wings. With the both of us now satisfied, I go back upstairs. When I come back up from the weapons room, Hayate ni sensei and old man Teisho looked even more surprised than they did when we all saw my elemental affinities. I wasn't surprised. I'm sure we all thought I'd only walk back up with a single katana or something. I know I did. Naruto. Did you feel a pull of sorts from all these weapons? Taisho asked after getting his voice back. I could only nod before asking, how much do I owe you? Taisho shook his head to clear it, I suppose. Special weapons need special payment. I don't think I can afford that, I said. Taisho chuckled. Not like that, Naruto. These weapons are one of a kind. You see, Naruto, the Taisho family has a unique sort of bloodline. A bloodline that is not as simply genetically passed down as others but is passed down from the oldest to youngest when the eldest dies. When I die, depending on whether I live long enough, the ability I have will either go to my granddaughter Tenten or her child. This ability is to make weapons with a consciousness. The consciousness of the weapon or weapon sets I make allow all said weapons to choose their wielder, and once they've chosen, the one chosen will be the only one to ever wield it unless the wielder chooses to pass the weapon down to a student, comrade, or relative. These weapons gain abilities depending on whose consciousness was used to make them, who the first wielder is, and gains one more ability each time it is passed down, if it is passed down. You're the one who made the swords of the 7 swordsmen of the mist. I said in realization. Back when my family traveled, yes. The Hokage knows this. Taisho said with a nod. Amazing. So all these weapons chose me? I asked. Yes. Taisho said with a light chuckle. Cool. How would I pay for them then? Taisho chuckled. Not something you really need to worry about. Things I need from you to pay are only 2 things I could use for a weapon or 2 to make with your consciousness. Only 2 because the tonfa are a set as well as the 3 katana. Although, when I made the set of 3 katana, I had thought they would choose a 3-man team, not a single wielder. Ah well. Your payment for the katanas will be a drop of blood each and payment for the tonfa will be 4 of your hairs. I'll also need a feather from Ibit for those razor wings. Huh? For your consciousness. Taisho said in explanation. Whoever the wielder of the weapons I will make from your payment would be someone you would choose to fight alongside with. The weapons I make never choose the person, they choose the soul. I nodded in slight understanding and paid Taisho for my tonfa and katanas, wishing him luck with whatever he created with my consciousness. After giving me a congrats and a clap on the back, Hayate ni sensei poofed away and I headed for Hokage Gigi's office to collect the pay I earned today. Needless to say, the old man and Iruka sensei were surprised when they saw all my weapons too, especially after what I told them what happened with the affinity paper. Ibit sat in my hair, feathers all puffed out in irritation while I held my bottom lip between my teeth to keep from laughing. I could tell Sakura was trying to keep her giggles in but one escaped from time to time. Sasuke only smirked and Kakashi was quietly laughing behind his book, though it was obvious the book was not the cause. Why were we trying not to laugh, you ask? The scene in front of us was the result of Team 7's mutual agreement that Ibit should be catbait, since our first of nearly a dozen missions to capture Tora-chan. The scene itself was the fire daimyo's wife crying over poor Tora-chan, who now had an inch-wide line from between the ears, down the spine, and to the tail tip of close-shaved baldness thanks to a certain irate and razor-winged sparrow atop my head. As soon as the woman and her cat were gone, even Hokage Gigi couldn't help but laugh. Once things calmed down, the old man started listing off more D-rank missions. I'd had enough. Now hold on, Gigi. I understand D-rank missions are good practice and all and are specifically for genin, but this is ridiculous. For the past month and a half since graduation, we've been assigned to many, if not all, of these household chores you all insist are missions. Half of which we were assigned were to capture that one stupid cat. We need a real mission. Too many of these chores and we'll start getting arrogant on how easy things are, and if not arrogant then lazy, both of which could get us killed later. Just when Iruka-sensei looked ready to lecture me, the old man held up a hand to silence him and asked, "Are you sure, Naruto?" "Yes. Besides, as soon as any ninja puts on their headband, they are no longer just a kid," I said firmly. The old man smiled and after a moment, he nodded. "Very well. You make a valid point. I have one C-rank mission right here. You'll be escorting a bridge builder to Wave Country. Come in, Tazuna." The slide door to my left opened to reveal a drunken old man with a large bottle of sake in hand. "These brats are the ninjas I'm paying to protect me?" he asked, displeased and disbelieving. The runt in the orange looks like a warrior wannabe with all those swords. Just when I was debating whether or not to slice that sake bottle off at the neck, Old Man Hokage says, "Oh, that reminds me. Naruto, your clothes arrived today. They're waiting for you in my office." Drunkard's comment was easily forgotten. Finally, I shouted gleefully, throwing my hands up the air as if to thank whatever deity was up there before booking it out of the room and down the hall to the old man's office. Normal POV. Naruto's reaction and action of rocketing out the door got chuckles out of the Hokage, Iruka, and Kakashi. His clothes? Sakura questioned. Yes. No ninja in his or her right mind would wear clothes that scream, "Kill me," by choice. Kakashi said. Then why does he? Sasuke asked. The villagers wouldn't sell him anything else. The Hokage said sadly. Iruka also frowned sadly while Sasuke and Sakura couldn't help but feel confused. People hate Naruto that much? What did he do? Sakura thought. A couple minutes later, Naruto was back wearing green cargo pants, newer looking and better fitting blue ninja sandals, bandage tape around his hands from wrist to knuckle, a sleeveless fishnet shirt underneath a dark crimson hooded sweatshirt with Ghost in black kanji on the back, and his headband was now tied around his left bicep. Better Naruto? Lord Hokage asked, smiling. Much, thank you, Naruto said with an answering smile. Alright, well that's everything. Dismissed. Team 7 went their separate ways to pack up for the mission and met at the gate a few minutes later. Just a few miles from Konoha, and Naruto started to get the feeling they were being watched. Swish. Naruto paused in step, looking deep in the trees in the direction he heard the movement. Sakura was too busy glancing at Sasuke, off in her own little world, when she nearly bumped into the blonde. Ready to rant, she said loudly, "Naruto." Shush. Everyone paused. What is it, Naruto? Kakashi asked. I thought I heard something in the trees. Naruto said. It was probably just a bird. Sakura said irritatedly. He's just trying to look cool. Cha. If it was a bird, I would have heard wings flapping. Naruto said in his own irritated tone. There was a moment of silence, and Kakashi noticed Tazuna was in a nervous cold sweat. Let's keep going, Kakashi said, but keep your guards up. And so they walked. Another mile or two of walking later, they come across a puddle. A puddle? On a day like this? Naruto thought, glancing back towards Kakashi, catching his eyes. Naruto faced the front once more and waited. Just when he sensed the attack, he did a sharp turn and threw a shuriken at the Mist Nin's shoulder. The Mist Nin blocked with an iron claw before he and his partner suddenly wrapped a barbed chain around Kakashi and sliced him to pieces. Sakura screamed. Sasuke got ready with a kunai in hand. Naruto didn't have to look to know Kakashi used a replacement jutsu. There was no smell of blood, and there's no way Kakashi would leave himself open like that. One down. One of the demon brothers chuckled. Naruto already had his tonfa blocking the strike the second demon brother made intended for him, and kneed the Mist Nin's gut before striking the Mist Nin across the face with the other tonfa. The other demon brother swung around intending to slice Naruto with the chain like they thought they did with Kakashi, only for Sasuke to throw a kunai and embed it into a tree with the chain attached. Naruto used this to his advantage and swung a leg up, sending a high kick to the second brother's jaw, and jumped to axe kick the crown of the Mist Nin's head. At the end of the axe kick, Naruto used the Mist Nin's head as a launch pad and did a backward somersault in the air over the first demon brother coming up behind him, landing in a crouch just when Kakashi appeared, holding the still conscious of the demon brothers in a headlock. Good job, Naruto, Sasuke, Kakashi said. As Kakashi tied the demon brothers to the tree Sasuke had kunai'd their chain to, Sasuke went up to Naruto. How did you know? Sasuke said in a more demanding tone than a question. Putting his tonfa away, Naruto looked at Sasuke in question. Huh? How did you know that guy was hiding in the puddle? Sasuke demanded again. Naruto raised an eyebrow. He seriously didn't know? Geez. When was the last time it rained? What does that have to do with anything? Sasuke shouted angrily. Just answer the question, Naruto said with a sigh. I don't know. A week or two? And you're still asking me how I knew? After a moment, Sasuke felt like smacking himself when he realized what the blonde meant. Why would there be a puddle anywhere on a hot day like this when it hasn't rained in days? Tazuna, you have some explaining to do, Kakashi said. With ninja involved, this mission would be at least a B rank. But with missing nin in the bingo books, like the Demon Brothers, it's rising to A rank. Look, I'm sorry I lied, but my village is so poor, it can't even afford to pay for a B rank mission. Tazuna said. If you had explained things, the old man would have taken an IOU. Naruto said with a frown. But I can't blame you for being scared that he wouldn't just take your money and leave you hanging. Naruto, don't talk about the Hokage like that. Sakura screeched. I wasn't talking about old man Hokage. I was talking about the idiot villagers who've been doing that to me my entire life. Naruto snapped back, shutting her up. Sighing, he looked back to Tazuna. So what's really going on, bridge builder? Tazuna hesitated a moment, looking Naruto in the eye, searchingly. His own eyes widened just a bit at what he saw. Single quote. This kid's not kidding. He knows what it's like. There's this man named Gato. Gato? As in Gato Shipping Company's Gato? Naruto questioned. Tazuna nodded. Behind the business is a cretin who loves money and watching people suffer. He took over our village and bleeds it dry of everything we have, using ninjas and mercenaries to do so, and secretly sells drugs and other illegal items. He's done this to other countries and businesses he's been to as well. He came to Wave about a year ago, and through money and violence, he quickly took control of the country's shipping industry. Gato now has monopoly on all the business and traffic in Wave country. The only thing he has to fear now is the completion of the bridge. Naruto nodded in understanding and looked to Kakashi with his arms crossed and a look on his face that said, I'm going, with or without you. Kakashi stared at the silent and stubborn blonde for a moment before sighing. Alright, we'll go. Naruto smiled. A few more hours later, they were getting off the boat to Wave. After a ways of walking, Naruto suddenly threw a kunai into the bushes. Sakura went over and found a white rabbit frozen in fear with the kunai Naruto threw embedded in a tree behind it, right between the ears. Naruto, quit showing off. Sakura shouted angrily. You almost killed this poor rabbit. Rabbits aren't white this time of year. Naruto muttered to himself, ignoring her. Something in his senses suddenly flashed danger alert. Get down. Naruto and Kakashi shouted, ducking, taking their teammates and Tazuna with them. They just missed getting decapitated by a spinning, flying, big-ass sword. Copy Nin Kakashi of the Sharingan. No wonder the Demon Brothers were defeated so easily. They looked up to see the sword they'd barely dodged embedded into a tree and a shirtless missing mist Nin standing right on the blade, just as a thick mist started setting in. Momochi Zabuza, demon of the bloody mist. Naruto said with a grin. You know me, kid? Zabuza asked, grinning under his bandages. I know I should feel scared, but I can't help but feel excited. Naruto said, untying his headband from his arm and readying it over his head, hair covered by the cloth and ibit hopping down to his shoulder. I'm sure it's not every day you meet a fellow wielder of a Taisho weapon. Zabuza gave Naruto a look over and eyed the blonde's 3 katana and pair of tonfa. Which one you get from the old geezer? Everything you see here, Naruto said, drawing all 3 katana. Zabuza started to chuckle before laughing out loud. I like you, kid. I was gonna fight Kakashi, but I think I'm gonna test you first. What's your name, kid? Uzumaki Naruto. An honor to meet you. You mind if I take my weights off? It'd probably be a bad idea to hold anything back against you. Probably. Sure. Naruto, are you trying to get yourself killed? Sakura screeched. Naruto, are you sure about this? Kakashi asked. Don't ask him. Stop him. Sakura screeches. I've made up my mind, and so has he. Naruto said in a firm tone. Right, Zabuza-san? Right, kid. But you can step in when you want, Kakashi. I'll still be killing the old man there. Kakashi only sighed and stepped back out of the way, all of them ignoring Sakura's rants. Naruto lifted the hand only holding one sword and a sign. Ibit, stay with the old man, bridge builder. After the little sparrow darted over to Tazuna's head from Naruto's shoulder, the blonde said. Kai. And then Naruto disappeared, wisps of mist and dirt floating around where his feet once were. Clang. Tazuna and Team 7 looked to see Zabuza airborne, blocking Naruto's first strike. Naruto jumped back, a katana in each hand and the handguardless katana's handle between his teeth. This kid's as fast as Haku, if not faster. Zabuza thought. This could mean trouble, but still be fun. Not bad, kid. Not bad at all. You have your first kill yet? Naruto sent a quick glance back at Sasuke and Sakura before looking back to Zabuza. So you have huh? And your teammates didn't know it. Naruto disappeared and it was Zabuza's pure instinct that saved him from a double vertical strike and a horizontal slash from the katana between the blonde's teeth. And people think I talk too much. Naruto said. Kakashi-sensei. What? What did Naruto mean by demon of the bloody mist? Sakura stuttered. Kakashi didn't answer, instead he focused on the two swordsmen fighting evenly. Naruto disappeared and reappeared several dozen times before slashing a gash on Zabuza's shoulder and side of the left knee and had to jump back, earning himself a horizontal cut under his right eye, just managing to block the rest of Zabuza's swing between the katana in his teeth and the katana in his left hand. Naruto had his left arm stretched across his chest for the block and his right arm over his stomach, right katana ready and swung, slashing a strike across Zabuza's abdomen. Zabuza kicked at Naruto's gut, forcing the blonde back, and swung his sword in a hammer strike into Naruto's right shoulder. Though still getting a deep cut from the strike, had Naruto's block with all three katana come a second later, his arm would have been sliced off. Naruto, look out! Kakashi stepped in, just in time, headband up revealing his Sharingan, when a Zabuza water clone was about to cut the blonde in half from behind. The clone turned into water. Mizubunshin? Kakashi and Naruto thought. When did he make the hand signs? Naruto was suddenly kicked in the left side of his head, sending his headband flying off, skidding in the dirt when he landed on his right side, the katana between his teeth now lying in the grass beside him. Kakashi rejoined Tazuna and the other two genin when Zabuza disappeared and reappeared, between the three-leaf shinobi. Only to be revealed as another Mizubunshin. Zabuza reappeared again, this time revealing Kakashi had copied his Mizubunshin. After a few punches, kicks, and swipes of the Kabikirabocho were exchanged, Kakashi found himself kicked away like it was nothing before being suddenly trapped in a water prison. Now that you're taken care of, I can finish off your comrades. Zabuza said smugly before making a one-handed hand sign, making another water clone that climbed out of the water. A single-handed sign. He's even more skilled than I thought. Kakashi thought with dread. Listen you guys. He shouted to his team. Take Tazuna and run. You have no chance against this guy. He's using all his power to keep me in the water prison so he can only fight you with his water clone. But the clone can't go far from his real body, so as you get away from him, he can't follow. Just run. Run away? Sasuke thought, trembling but gritting his teeth. You got to be kidding me. That option was gone from the moment you got caught. No matter how fast we run or how far we go without you, sooner or later he'd track us down, and wipe us out. In the end, Sasuke glances at Naruto who stood back up on his feet with a katana still in each hand, then glanced over to Sakura who was just standing there trembling in fear. We're finished on our own. Our only chance of surviving through this is to rescue you. We'll just have to fight. The raven-haired boy shouted before charging in, throwing as many shuriken as he thought necessary as he went. Zabuza's clone swiped to the shuriken and blinked before looking up to find Sasuke had leapt up to go for an aerial attack. Too easy, said the clone, catching Sasuke by the neck before tossing him into the dirt. Sasuke, no, Sakura shouted helplessly. Damn it Sasuke. Naruto mentally cursed. You think wearing a headband makes you a ninja? Zabuza said to the genin with a chuckle. A real ninja is one who has hovered between life and death numerous times. In other words, only those deadly enough, who are worth being listed in my bingo book deserve to be called ninja. Aside from Uzumaki here, upstarts like you can't hope to be called real ninja. What a joke. Zabuza's clone suddenly disappeared into the mist and reappeared kicking Naruto in the ribs, making the blonde go skidding in the dirt a few more feet away from his grounded katana and his untied headband. The clone stomped on the leaf headband. You're just a bunch of brats. Naruto sat up with a pain grunt, slightly wincing, and looked to his headband. Zabuza's water clone was currently grinding into the dirt. Congratulations, you graduate, Iruka said smiling proudly, holding up Naruto's goggles and his own headband gone. Naruto scrunched his eyebrows forwards in a frown before standing slowly and shakily on his feet when he suddenly dropped his other two katana and went charging weaponless towards Zabuza's clone. Naruto no! Kakashi shouted. Fool! Zabuza said, swinging the flat edge of his sword at Naruto's head, sending him flying back towards his teammates and Tazuna. "What were you thinking charging in on your own?" Sakura shouted at the downed blonde. Even Sasuke was no match for. Wah! Naruto spat out some blood, his body trembling, getting back up to his feet, shaking his head a bit as if shaking off the pain. Standing firmly once more on his feet, everyone suddenly noticed he was gripping his discarded headband in one of his taped-up hands. The headband, Sakura thought, blinking in surprise. Naruto wordlessly tied his headband over his hair before smirking with his eyes still shadowed with his head tilted down. He lifts his head up slightly so Zabuza and Kakashi could see he was far from finished, and he was now, more than ever, determined to prove it. "I got something for your bingo book, Zabuza," he said, firmly wiping his chin clean of blood. "Anyone who thinks I won't fight till I succeed can kiss my ass. I got a path to follow, and dying here isn't part of it. I'm gonna be Hokage near the end of it after all." Naruto, Kakashi thought. "Sasuke, listen up, I got a plan," Naruto said without taking his eyes off Zabuza's clone. "You want to discuss plans under these circumstances?" "This guy," Sasuke scoffed. "Finally thinking about teamwork, huh?" Naruto's smirk widened a bit more with determination, with Sasuke smirking alongside him. "Let's get wild," Naruto said. Zabuza started chuckling. "I'll admit you have a lot of potential, Uzumaki Naruto, but do you really think any sort of plan you could come up with will get you out of here alive? This isn't good. What are you doing? I told you to run," Kakashi shouted. "This fight was over the moment I got caught. Just hurry and run. This mission is not about proving how brave you are, it's about protecting the bridge builder. Have you forgotten that? Those who disobey orders are trash. Those who abandon their comrades are worse than trash," Naruto said, seriously staring at his sensei. "I can't imagine you'd forget those words you told us so easily, sensei." Naruto then looked over his shoulder at Tazuna with a frown. "Old man, what do you say?" "Well, this all happened 'cause I wanted to stay alive, but I won't let that stay in your way now," Tazuna said with his own determination. "Fight as hard as you can to save your sensei. Hear that?" Sasuke said with a smirk. "Yep," Naruto said with his own smirk. "You ready?" They could only frown once more when Zabuza started chuckling before outright laughing once more. "You really haven't learned anything, have you? Still playing ninja? When I was your age, these hands were already stained red with blood." "Zabuza, the demon," Kakashi said. "You heard of me too, huh?" Zabuza said somewhat gleefully. "Demon?" Sakura exclaimed for turning to the blonde. "And Naruto, you said that before too. Demon of the bloody mist. What did you mean by that?" Naruto frowned deeper, scowling at Zabuza and clenching his fists, while Kakashi decided to explain for him. "A long time ago, in the Mist Village, often called Blood Mist Village, before a student could become a ninja, there was one final test," Kakashi said. Zabuza gave a slightly impressed hum. "You also know about the graduation exam?" "Hey," and by the scowl and cold look in Uzumaki's eye, he does too. "What graduation exam?" Sakura asked. Zabuza darkly chuckled in response. "What's the big deal?" Sakura asked. "We had a final graduation test too. We didn't have to kill each other to pass, Sakura," Naruto said faintly, but everyone heard him and it made their blood run cold. What? Sasuke choked. "Yes," Zabuza said with a darker, more chilling chuckle than before. "Imagine ninja who ate meals together, trained together, formed into pairs and tried to kill each other for the final test. It wouldn't end until one was dead. The rules were kill or be killed. You can't stop while your opponent still breathes. He was your friend, shared your dreams, and now it's him or you." "How cruel," Sakura whimpered. 10 years ago, Kakashi said, the village hidden in the mist graduation exam drastically changed. That was because 1 year before, a dark evil filled the school with terror. "What's he saying?" Sakura questioned, but no one answered. "What evil? What kind of change? What caused the terror?" Without pause or hesitation, Kakashi said, "A young boy, who didn't even have the qualifications for being a ninja, approached the class and annihilated over 100 students." The chill in the air hung and the silence was deafened by the genins and bridge builders' own heartbeats. "That sure was fun," Zabuza said, grinning under the tape. His proclamation made nearly everyone flinch and tremble when Zabuza's clone suddenly disappeared again, but this time went after Sasuke. elbowing his gut, making the Uchiha fly back before driving his elbow into Sasuke's gut when the Uchiha's back was to the ground and Sasuke coughed up blood. Sasuke! Sakura shouted in distress. Zabuza stood and ground his foot into Sasuke's stomach just as he did to Naruto's headband moments before. Kakashi couldn't help being angry with himself, feeling so useless. Naruto grit his teeth and made 36 shadow clones. Oh, shadow clones. And there's quite a few of them. Zabuza said, impressed. All the Narutos armed themselves with a kunai before charging in and dog piled on Zabuza. Swinging his blade around in a circle, Zabuza destroyed half of the Naruto clones and sent the other half flying. One particular Naruto skidded on his back and pulled out a windmill shuriken. Sasuke, catch! Sasuke caught the folded windmill shuriken and knew what the blonde was planning the moment he caught it, mentally praising him before spinning around and unfolding the windmill shuriken and tossing it at the real Zabuza, holding Kakashi captive. Only for Zabuza to catch it. Zabuza praised them for being clever enough to throw it at his real body rather than the clone, before saying it wasn't clever enough when he saw another windmill shuriken head his way that was hidden to the first shuriken's shadow. Before he jumped over it. Still too naive, Zabuza said. He dodged it. Sakura thought in disbelief. Sasuke, however, couldn't help but smirk. And suddenly, the windmill shuriken poofed into Naruto with a kunai, much to everyone but Sasuke's surprise. Naruto tossed the kunai at Zabuza, where he couldn't block or dodge it, forcing Zabuza to let go of his hold on the water prison holding Kakashi, but still go a slice under his eye from the kunai Naruto threw. Enraged, Zabuza was ready to throw the windmill shuriken he'd caught at the blonde while Naruto was still in the air. Only for Kakashi to block one of the blade with the back of his fist as Naruto landed in a crouch atop the water. Sasuke and Sakura took their stances in front of Tazuna, hopefully ready for anything. The windmill shuriken was folded back up before Kakashi tossed it away, and the two jumped apart, going through the same hand signs and the water under their feet, reacting, seeming coming to life in the forms of a water dragon for each of them. Naruto cut the flow of chakra to his feet and dove underwater so he wouldn't get any backlash of the two water dragons' attacks. When he surfaced, Zabuza and Kakashi were toe-to-toe, Kabikirabocho versus kunai. He got back on top of the water and rushed back to land with Tazuna and his teammates. No one noticed the young man in the mist nin hunter nin mask standing on a branch watching the fight with the rest of them. It was only after the two jumped back, circled each other, and stood in the exact same formation, that Zabuza realized Kakashi seemed to know his movements before he did. Kakashi was angering him and angering him further when he was saying the same things as Zabuza as well. He started to panic when he saw his own image behind Kakashi, panicking further when Kakashi could make the giant vortex jutsu before Zabuza had the chance. Zabuza was hit and was flushed onto land with the water into a tree when Kakashi tossed several kunai at him, stood on a tree branch above him. Just when Kakashi was about to finish him off, 3 senbon went straight through Zabuza's neck. Everyone looked to the hunter nin they finally noticed. With a chuckle, the hunter nin said, "You were right. He's dead." Kakashi hopped down from his spot in the tree and checked Zabuza's pulse just to be sure. "He's definitely dead," Kakashi said before looking up to the hunter nin. "He's just a kid," Tazuna said with surprise. "So are we. What's your point?" Naruto said. "And he's no ordinary kid," both Kakashi and Naruto thought. "In this world, there are kids younger than us and even stronger than Kakashi-sensei," Naruto said flatly. "Still, I can't help but feel a bit bitter. All this time, all it took for us to go up against Zabuza, and this kid just pops up and kills him so easily. It makes me feel a bit pathetic. But whoever said being a ninja was easy?" The hunter nin shunshined down to Zabuza's body and pulled the body over his shoulder to take it away to dispose of. "Thank you for the assistance," said the hunter nin before disappearing. Naruto sighed, taking his headband off and readying it onto his right bicep. Just before he and Kakashi fell to the ground, Naruto slowly wobbled back up onto his feet a couple minutes later while Kakashi lay unconscious from chakra exhaustion. Naruto went over to the unconscious Junin and threw him over his shoulder like it was nothing. And seeing as Naruto still had his weight seals unsealed, it really was nothing. "Come on, better hurry to Tazuna's," Naruto said tiredly. Tazuna nodded. Both he and the other two genin were still shocked by this and what they'd already witnessed. Tazuna picked up Naruto's pack and led the way to his home. About half an hour later, they reached the village and the house Tazuna lived in. Tazuna's daughter, Tsunami, led Naruto to one of the guest bedrooms for Kakashi. Naruto carefully put Kakashi down on the futon before Tsunami offered to bandage his wounds. Naruto asked if he could take a shower first, so Tsunami led him to the guest bathroom. "I'll wash your clothes while you shower," Tsunami offered. "Thanks, but could you actually leave my pants and boxers?" Naruto asked. "Sure, thanks." A few minutes later, Naruto came downstairs wearing the pants he'd kept, a light gray sleeveless hoodie zipped up only halfway, showing his bare chest, with a red-winged tribal dragon on the back, headband tied around his bare bicep where it belonged, and his hands re-bandaged from wrist to knuckle like usual. He re-weighted his seals and his Teisho weapons were in their sheaths on his waist where they belonged. Sakura, Sasuke, Tazuna, Tsunami, and a gloomy-looking little kid were in the kitchen already eating dinner. "Naruto, this is my grandson Inari," Tazuna said, nodding over to the little kid. "Inari, this is the swordsman boy I was talking about." Inari looked Naruto up and down before going back to his meal. "He has cold eyes. Kinda like mine," Naruto mentally mused. Ibit flew out of Tazuna's hair and into Naruto's, making the blonde smile. "I'd forgotten he was in there," Tazuna said, brushing his hand over the crown of his hair. "Well, he is a ninja sparrow," Naruto said with a chuckle as he could feel Ibit puff up in pride. Naruto immediately started eating when Tsunami gave him a plate, but he soon found himself pausing when he caught his teammates' stares. "What?" Naruto questioned. Snapping out of their daze, Sakura hesitated a moment before saying, "Naruto. When Zabuza asked if you'd killed yet and you said nothing, was he right to assume you have?" Naruto slowly chewed what was already into his mouth and swallowed, still slightly hesitant to answer. "Yes," he said before going back to his meal. A chill went up everybody but Sasuke's spine at Naruto's somewhat casual tone. How old were you?" Sakura asked somewhat quietly. Slowly chewing again, Naruto thinks how to answer before glancing over at Inari, then looking to Tsunami and Tazuna. "How old's Inari?" "He just turned 8, Tsunami said, slightly confused. Naruto nodded, taking a few more bites of dinner before saying, "I was 2 years younger than Inari." A chill went up everyone's spine that time. "He was 6? They all mentally exclaimed. Why would you kill someone, Naruto?" Sakura gasped. Naruto frowned coldly at her aghast and horrified expression before putting down his chopsticks. "In case you forgot, Sakura, we're ninja. Sometimes we have to kill. Not because we like to, but because it may be our job." Naruto said crossly. "We have to. But 6 years old? Naruto, you weren't even in the academy then," Sakura argued, "so it couldn't have been your job. And seeing as you've never been outside the village before now means it had to be a Konoha resident. It could have been a ninja that snuck within our walls or a traitor like Mizuki." Naruto pointed out, his tone slightly sharper. "But it wasn't, was it?" Sakura countered angrily and accusing, looking at Naruto like he was becoming another Zabuza. "No, sadly not. And you were 6 years old." Sakura repeated. "Yeah, so? So why did you kill someone?" "I had to kill someone so they wouldn't kill me." Naruto snapped with a pound of his fist against the table. Tsunami gasped, her eyes moistening up. Naruto glared at Sakura's surprised and appalled expression before closing his eyes, turning away from her, taking a deep breath and stood from his seat. "Food was great, Tsunami, but I've just lost my appetite." With that, Naruto headed out of the kitchen to the back porch and sat down to cool his head. After taking a few calming breaths before reaching down to the brown leather-coated steel thin cylinder case on his thigh, about the length of his thigh, just behind his shuriken case that no one seems to notice. Unsnapping the button of the lid, Naruto pulled out an old and slightly worn wooden flute. To anyone it would look like a plain wooden instrument you wouldn't be able to sell for a 10-yen piece, but to Naruto it was priceless and irreplaceable. He smiled remembering when he first got it and why. Flackback. A 9-year-old Naruto sat patiently, watching the old man Hokage paint while smoking his pipe. Gigi? Naruto questioned. "Yes, Naruto?" the old man asked without looking away from his work. "Aren't we going to do another academy lesson?" Or some training? The blonde asked confused. Being a ninja isn't all about training Naruto. Hiruzen Sarutobi said. Too much of one thing is no good. It's good to train your body as well as your mind, yes, but it's also good to have something, a hobby of sorts as well as a meditation, where you are completely relaxed. For a few examples, I paint, my sensei swam, Shodem wood carved, Jiraiya writes, your father listened to music, your mother gardened. There must be something you like besides reading up on things and training. I like to garden, but that's just I feel comfortable around nature. Naruto said finally. And I like music, but rather than just listening to it, I'd like to play. But it's not like anyone would sell me an instrument, much less even let me in the shop. Sarutobi paused in his painting before looking to Naruto, thoughtfully before getting an idea. Any specific instrument you have in mind, Naruto? Naruto thought for a moment before shaking his head. No, not really. Sarutobi nodded before putting down both his paintbrush and his pipe and got up from the pillow he was kneeling on and went over to his office's walk-in closet. Naruto only waited a moment before following to find the old man standing on a step ladder to get at one of the highest shelves. It wasn't long until he seemed to find what he was looking for. Stepping down from the stepladder, the old man wiped the dust of the object with his handkerchief before turning to Naruto and held out an old wooden flute in front of him. I told you the Shodem wood carved. The Sandaime said. This was one piece of his work. It's old, of course, but it's never been used. Naruto carefully but firmly held the wooden flute in his hands before jumping up to hug the old man. The old man was surprised slightly at first before he laughed and held his surrogate grandson back. A couple days later Naruto got a case for the flute that Taisho Daisuke made. The outside was brown leather with a snap button to keep it closed and the inside was a soft but very thick cloth, but sewn in between the leather and the cloth is a steel cylinder that fit just around the flute. The case even had an adjustable belt to go around Naruto's thigh. Sarutobi taught Naruto to read sheet music for the following couple weeks, but the blonde hardly ever used the sheet music. Whenever he played, he usually played whatever came to mind or heart. It was usually the same song that he just put together the day he first got the flute, but that isn't to say it was the only song he ever played. Now, Naruto was grumbling to himself sitting on the roof of the academy because a teacher kicked him out of class just for asking to go to the bathroom. It was about break time now, but Naruto was debating whether to even go back to class afterwards. Sighing to himself, he took out his flute, thinking maybe playing would calm him down and make him feel a bit better. This would be the first time he didn't play outside the Hokage's office though. Taking a deep calming breath, he brought the flute to his lips and began to play. The song was sad, slow, and gave off a feeling of a sorrowful nostalgia almost. Remembrance of happy memories now turned sad, or the kind of memories you regret having because you wish you could go back and change them. And some memories you wish you couldn't remember at all. Shifu's flute music from Kung Fu Panda. Link watch? V equals -5 QHNRM mil I. As Naruto played from where he was sitting on the roof, he had no idea that any activity during break had slowed before coming to a stop so the children and teachers could listen to the music they heard and didn't know where it was coming from. Iruka knew though, and he just sat back and listened with a smile. Naruto didn't know and the Hokage didn't tell him, but there was one time while the Sandaime was doing paperwork. Naruto had been sitting on the couch playing his flute with his eyes closed, as they always were when he played, and Iruka had walked in. He'd stopped and stared at the young blonde in surprise, and the Sandaime put a finger to his lips, silently telling the Chunin to be quiet before motioning for Iruka to come in and drop off whatever paperwork he'd come to deliver. Naruto was too focused and relaxed playing, he hadn't noticed a thing. It was several minutes later the music stopped and on the roof Naruto sighed quietly to himself with a light smile before putting his flute away and going back to class. On his way back to the classroom he heard some students and teachers muttering to themselves. He was quite used to this. No doubt they were saying mean things about him. Or so he thought. Where do you think that music was playing from? One kid asked another. I don't know, but it was pretty. Another said. Who do you think was playing it? I want to hear it again. Naruto, up to that point, turned right around and headed home. He didn't much care to go to class with his face as red as a cherry. Flashback end. Naruto chuckled, looking back before bringing his flute to his lips and started playing that same song. Though, of course, after much time and practice, It sounded much smoother and softer than it had back then, he was sure. Sakura and Sasuke had looked up from staring ashamedly, Sakura, and solemnly, Sasuke, at their meals to the direction Naruto had left in surprise. They'd recognized that song instantly, hearing it from time to time in the academy though never knowing where it had come from. Tazuna and Tsunami looked up as well when they heard that song. That song, Sasuke muttered in disbelief. It's beautiful, Tsunami said, but it sounds so sad. It reminds me of. She trailed off as her eyes began to tear up. Naruto's really good at playing the flute. Tazuna said quietly, knowing just how Tsunami felt and what she was talking about. Naruto, Sakura questioned. Well, who else could it be? Tazuna asked. Inari doesn't have a flute and your sensei's still lights out. Sakura could only down sheepishly while Sasuke continued to stare towards the doorway and listen to the music Naruto was playing. He remembered when he first heard the song back in the academy. It had been a year and a half since his clan had been slaughtered, and when he heard that flute playing, he instantly started thinking about all the good times he had with Itachi. His mother smiling at him. His grandparents wishing him a good day, the first time his father truly praised him rather than compare him to Itachi. He'd had to run to the bathroom before any of his classmates could see him break down. Now he could only wonder how Naruto could play such a song. Now that he actually thought about it, Naruto hadn't worn that big stupid grin in a while. He still wondered why the usually hyperactive knucklehead carried those tonfa and 3 katana on his person even after Kakashi told him and Sakura the blonde had mastered Kenjutsu. What could have happened to the blonde? What change? Sasuke then thought back to team introductions when they met Kakashi in the morning after, as well as some more recent events. I'm Uzumaki Naruto. I like to read, train, learning more jutsu, and a few other things. I dislike judgmental and arrogant pricks who just assume things and don't even bother to get their facts straight, and a couple of other things. My hobbies fall under my likes and pulling pranks, and another thing or two. And my dream is more of a lifelong goal really. I want to surpass my father and those before him. What makes me dead last was all the teachers aside from Iruka-sensei failing me without even looking at my papers, brushing me off whenever I actually asked for help, and kicking me out of class for no reason whenever we were learning things together. The blonde opens his closed eyes and looked at his teammates saying, but you two wouldn't know that, would you? Not with your precious Sasuke-kun around or you and your nobody's better than me attitude that will sooner get the both of you killed. If you had explained things, the old man would have taken an IOU. Naruto said with a frown. But I can't blame you for being scared that he wouldn't just take your money and leave you hanging. Naruto, don't talk about the Hokage like that. Sakura screeched. I wasn't talking about old man Hokage. I was talking about the idiot villagers who've been doing that to me my entire life. Sasuke began thinking back further. What did any of them really know about Naruto? Back out on the porch, Naruto finished his song and put his flute away, leaning back against one of the beams with one leg bent up at the knee and the other hanging over the edge of the porch. He sat calm and collected a moment before saying, "You can come out now. I can sense you." Inari came out from behind the slide door. "You have eyes like mine," he said somewhat quietly. "Because I know pain," Naruto said, turning his head slightly to give a sideways look towards Inari before looking forwards again. Inari nodded in a sort of agreement before going over and sitting next to Naruto, both his little legs hanging over the edge. "I know what Gato's done to your village," Naruto said, noticing Inari flinch from the corner of his eye. "But by the look of it, I'd say he's done something a bit more personal towards you and your family. Mind telling me what happened?" Inari glanced at Naruto to see the blonde was still looking forwards at nothing in particular. Biting his lip, he too looked forward at nothing before bringing his knees up to his chest and hugging his legs just as his eyes began to water. "My dad," Inari said with a choked sob. "A couple years ago, I was being bullied by some big kids and one of them threw my puppy in the water sniffle. He said if I wanted my puppy back so much I should go get him, but I didn't know how to swim. Then I was thrown in the water and Dad saved me. He became my dad soon after and a hero to the village after that. There was a big storm and he dove in the water to fix one of the dams where the rain had flooded in. Everybody called my daddy a hero. But then Gato came." By this time Inari was crying and couldn't seem to stop. Gato had Dad's arms pulled out of their sockets and tied to a post so they were useless, had him beaten and killed in front of the whole village. He said he would protect the city with his own 2 arms. What a liar. I know the truth, there's no such thing as real heroes. Inari bawled loudly before whimpering to a stop when he was surprised to feel a hand patting his head and blinked confusedly at Naruto. I know it sure as well seems that way, but your dad is a hero. Naruto said. Gato had him killed because that money-grubbing bastard knew that killing the village hero would break it. If the one who wanted control and couldn't get it had the person everyone looked up to killed, of course he would be feared. Gato's nothing but a selfish power-hungry swine, and he's trying to do the same thing he did to the village by killing your father back then, by killing your grandfather now. Gato's afraid if the bridge gets built, not only will he lose money, but the village will get back the glory it had before Gato came to dictate it. Your dad's death doesn't mean he was a liar or that heroes don't exist, Inari. It just shows how desperate Gato is for power. My team and I are here so that doesn't happen again with your grandpa. Inari wiped his nose on the back of his hand and the tears from his face with his palm. How do you know all that? He sniffled. Because my dad died a hero on the day I was born. Naruto said, making Inari blink up at him in surprise. I grew up hated by my village with no family at all. My mom died in childbirth, as far as I know anyway. It's kind of funny. My dad is still seen as their hero to this day and they hate me for being born. They don't know I'm his son. I don't get how since I look just like him, but they hate me because they think I'm something I'm not. It's because of what my dad did to die a hero that they think that way. But I don't hate him for it. I actually couldn't be prouder of my dad. He did everything he could to save his home and the people he loved. And one day I'll do the same. I'll change their minds and prove to everyone I'll be the best. Proving people wrong is half the fun. Naruto said with his famous grin, though it was more genuine than the fake grin he always used to wear. Inari could only look at Naruto with wide eyes before sniffing one last time. Go on, it's getting late and you should probably be getting to bed, Naruto said with a nod to the door. Inari nodded and got up to go inside before pausing in the doorway. How much did the village hate you? Inari asked quietly, though he had a bit of an idea from the killed to not be killed bit earlier. They made me wear orange, Naruto said with a shudder. Inari couldn't help but laugh and Naruto couldn't help but smile at his accomplishment. He didn't really hate orange, but he didn't like it so much he'd ever wear that jumpsuit again. Inari left for bed and the person he sensed when Inari really started to bawl came out in the open. It was Tsunami. She was crying. Thank you so much. She cried, kneeling down and hugging Naruto, who could only widen his eyes and blink in surprise. Why is she thanking me? Naruto thought. I haven't heard Inari laugh or seen him smile like that since Kaiza was alive. She said without loosening her embrace on him. Kaiza must be Inari's dad. No need to thank me. I was only telling him the truth and my opinion. Naruto said honestly but slightly blank. All the more reason. Without much warning, she kissed his cheeks and forehead before hugging him again. Thank you, Naruto. You're a great man. With that, she stood and went back to the kitchen, almost not noticing the light flush on Naruto's face. The next day, Kakashi woke and explained how the Hunternin was a fake and thus began to train the genin in tree walking. Naruto, you can go practice kunai balancing. Kunai balancing? Sakura questioned. It's a more advanced chakra control technique. Kakashi said. Naruto's quite a few steps ahead of you two and the other rookies when it comes to chakra control. Then why couldn't he preform Bunshin until after graduation? Sakura asked smugly. I still can't preform Bunshin. Naruto corrected, making the two other genin look at him confusedly. What I use are Kage Bunshin. Kage Bunshin? Sasuke questioned. It's a Junin level technique. Kakashi said. Naruto's chakra reserves are far too big, and always have been, to preform some of the simpler jutsu. With that, Naruto left for the house for advanced kunai balancing in his room. A couple hours later, Kakashi found Naruto where he started in a sort of one-handed handstand position, except his index finger was balancing his whole body on the point of a kunai. Naruto had switched fingers every few minutes on each hand, starting with his pinky. Naruto, I want you to guard Tazuna today while Sakura and Sasuke continue to train. Kakashi ordered. Naruto gave a nod and brought himself down to the floor before he walked with Kakashi downstairs. Inari was helping Tsunami hang the laundry to dry when he saw Naruto coming downstairs. After bridge work today, we'll be stopping by the market on the way back. Tazuna said. Naruto only nodded, noticing Inari staring after them as they walked out the front and paused. Inari, if you want to come with us, just say so. Inari stiffened before looking at his feet, embarrassed before nodding. Tsunami smiled warmly while Tazuna blinked in confusion and shock. Alright, always bring your thumb over your fingers and lock your wrist because if you punch without doing so, you'll break your hand and/or wrist. Naruto instructed. And the real power behind the punch is in your stance, so keep your feet apart and knees slightly bent. Tazuna and the workers found themselves staring from time to time as Naruto taught Inari some basic stances and moves with Inari listening with a couple nods here and there to show it without argument. Every time Inari did something wrong, he would only nod and try again when Naruto corrected him, and every time he did something right, Naruto would praise him and pat his head, causing Inari to smile. I haven't seen Inari smile like that since Kaizo was here. A worker commented. Yeah, another agreed. Tazuna almost felt like crying to see Inari smiling again, until another one of the workers came up to Tazuna to apologize and quit. Naruto looked over to see Tazuna yelling as the man left. He glanced around and felt a bit stupid that he hadn't noticed how few workers there were for building a bridge. Naruto? Inari questioned as to why Naruto stopped talking to him. Hang on, Inari. Naruto said, putting his hands in an all-too-familiar sign, and created 30 shadow clones, gaining surprised looks from the other workers and Inari. Tazuna, I've never built a bridge before, but if instructed precisely, these guys will do everything you say. Naruto said, gesturing to his clones. Tazuna couldn't help but smile before shouting off orders, and everyone got back to work while Naruto got back to teaching Inari. Later, when the sun was beginning to set, work was done for the day and Tazuna brought Naruto and Inari to the market. In a shop with hardly any food in their baskets or on the tables, and the shelves were just as bare, Naruto sensed the hand closing in on his weapons pouch. A kunai blade was at the man's neck before he could blink. I suggest you back away slowly before I accidentally slice your throat open. Naruto said monotonically without looking back at the man. The man did as Naruto suggested, and slowly backed away before leaving the shop in a hurry. Cut the guy some slack, Naruto. Tazuna said. Tazuna, these people, all of them, are that desperate, right? Naruto asked. I can understand the means of survival, I lived it. If I were another ninja, I would have killed the guy without hesitation. I was cutting the guy's slack. From the look of it, he was going to steal from here before he saw me, and stealing from someone who doesn't have much anything left makes such an action no better than what Gato's done. These words caught the attention of everyone in the shop and those passing by on the street. Heading back to Tazuna's home, Naruto sensed another hand, but this one was without ill intention. He looked to see a little girl with her hands out and a hopeful smile on her face. Naruto could remember when he did the same, only to be shoved away. Kneeling down with the girl looking at him confusedly when he took a small scroll from his weapons pouch and unrolled it in front of her. On the scroll paper were 6 complicated-looking seals with the numbers 0 to 9 circled around each seal. Naruto focused chakra into a finger, tapping the numbers 0 and 3 of the numbers circling one seal before placing his hand over the seal itself. With a puff of smoke, 3 juicy red apples appeared and he handed them to the girl, who smiled brightly and ran off after saying a quick and hurried, "Thank you." "How'd you do that?" Tazuna asked as Naruto put the scroll back in his weapons pouch. "There are several food stands in Konoha and only one will let me eat their food. There is only one grocery store in Konoha, but whenever I try to buy food there, they'll make me pay 3 or 4 times as the original amount. So when I was 6, I put basic summoning seals under the shelves and tables with basic food groups. The summoning seals, though basic, have a couple tweaks I added. Such as the numbers. I focused chakra into 2 numbers, first the 0 for an amount in single digits, and simply summon food from the store to me. People could call it stealing, except, the store manager did the same and more when charging me 3 to 4 times the original price of a sandwich he ate half of right in front of me, and I have permission from Old Man Hokage to do so. When I was younger, he said to look at it as if it were stealth training." Naruto said with a light chuckle. Tazuna nodded as they made their way to the house. X. The next day, early in the morning, Naruto left to train with his Teisho weapons. Ibit flew over his head and practiced razor blading leaves to shreds while Naruto practiced with his tonfa. Naruto spun the tonfa alongside his arms, hearing the high-pitch whistle and the sonic frequencies getting higher the faster he spun them. He stopped spinning them and looked over the tonfa but found nothing that showed made the sound with them. Shrugging, Naruto practiced his sparrow style. Naruto moved fluidly, doing aerial flips from time to time, blocking an invisible opponent, dodging non-existent strikes, and striking back at the air as well. Finally, he landed in a forward-facing stance before thrusting both tonfa forwards, when the points he thrust forwards suddenly shot towards the tree in front of him as kunai with chains and wrapped the chains around the tree. Naruto stood there in surprise before smiling. He now knew his tonfa's ability. They could activate black chakra chains. Naruto flipped the tonfa back over and pulled them back before leaping up out of the way of the falling tree as the chakra chains reeled themselves back into his tonfa. After practicing a bit more, he found the chakra chains activated on both the front and back ends of each tonfa. Naruto trained for another hour before sheathing his tonfa and lying stomach down in the grass to take a break with a short nap. Ibit flew down to join him, getting comfortable in Naruto's spikes just above the blonde's left ear. X. Naruto woke with a loud yawn and lifted his head from his arms, making Ibit roll off his head and onto his back. The little sparrow shook his feathers and flapped his wings tiredly as Naruto found he was currently gripping the wrist of a pretty boy in pink. A very pretty boy. Naruto had to look twice to make sure he wasn't a girl as he let go of the boy's wrist. Sorry about that, Naruto mumbled tiredly before sitting up, making Ibit flutter up to his shoulder. Reflexes. It's fine. Are you a ninja? The boy asked. Yeah, I was out here training. I only meant to take a nap, but I guess I must have really dozed off. Introducing themselves and talking a bit, Naruto offered to help Haku in gathering some herbs. They'd been picking herbs for a while now when Haku asked him something that really caught his interest. Do you believe you're a strong ninja? Haku asked. Strong enough, but I get stronger every day. Naruto answered without looking up. Do you have a person precious to you? Haku asked. Why do you ask? Naruto asked hesitantly, pausing in his herb picking and looking up at the pretty boy. Well, I believe a person is truly strong when they are fighting for someone precious to them. Haku said, looking Naruto in the eye. Naruto slowly gave a nod of impression before going back to his herb picking. I don't have a precious person. Haku frowned sadly and let out a quiet sigh that Naruto almost didn't hear, but before he could comment, Naruto finished with, I have precious people who I would fight my all for. Haku couldn't help smiling at that. Thank you for the help, Naruto. Haku said, leaving. No problem, Haku. Naruto said, leaving as well. Say hi to Zabuza for me. Naruto added casually without pause in his step. Haku, however, came to a halt in surprise before smiling and continuing on his way. Naruto met Sasuke halfway back to the house. Where'd you go, Naruto? Inari asked as Naruto ate breakfast. Just training, Inari. I even found the ability of my tonfa. Naruto said. Really, Naruto? Kakashi questioned. What do they do? Chakra chains. Kakashi looked to him in slight surprise before smiling behind his mask, nodding. Seems rather fitting. Naruto nodded with a smile of his own. I thought so too. What are chakra chains? Sakura asked. It's a forbidden technique created by Konoha's red hot-blooded habanero. Kakashi explained. The only reason it's really forbidden is because she died before teaching it to anyone. It's most likely, if not surely, her consciousness that was used to make Naruto's tonfa. Certain Taisho weapons are made with a person's consciousness, so the weapon gets to choose its wielder. Cool. Inari gasped, making Naruto and Kakashi chuckle. And why does it seem fitting that Naruto was chosen by these chakra chain tonfa that were made with the red hot-blooded habanero's consciousness? Sasuke asked. It actually makes perfect sense, considering she was Naruto's mother. Kakashi said. Sasuke and Sakura looked to Naruto questioningly while Naruto just ignored them. Tazuna cleared his throat and asked, So Naruto, you planning on helping with the bridge building again today? Naruto was thankful for the change of subject. Sorry Tazuna, that's up to Kakashi-sensei. I'm going to have Sasuke guard you today, Tazuna, since he accomplished tree walking last night while I have Sakura build up her chakra reserves. Kakashi said. Does Sasuke know the Kage Bunshin thing? Tazuna asked. No, that's a Junin level technique. Kakashi said. I thought Naruto was only a genin. Tazuna said confused. He is. Then why does he know it? Because he can't do a regular bunshin. What's the difference? Regular bunshins are only illusions while cage bunshins are solid clones. So a regular bunshin wouldn't be able to help with the construction of my bridge? No. Dang it. I can send a few clones with you to the bridge if you'd like, Tazuna. Naruto said. It would be much appreciated, thanks. Tazuna said. The whole conversation between Tazuna and Kakashi made Sasuke seethe and he was grinding his teeth by the end of it. After breakfast, Naruto went back up to his room to practice more kunai balancing but found Inari following him. What is it, Inari? Naruto asked. Can you teach me some more? Inari asked hopefully. Naruto chuckled. Sure. Leading Inari to his room, Naruto unsealed a shogi board and set it up. I thought we were going to train, not play games. Inari said, disappointed. It's best to be just as strong here, Naruto said, pointing to his temple, as it is here. He said, lifting his arm and pointing at his bicep. After teaching Inari shogi and playing a few games, Naruto made a clone to play 3 more games with Inari before taking him outside to run laps around the house. The original Naruto was planning on going back into the woods for more training but found Tsunami in the kitchen with a big pile of dishes and lunch still needing to be cooked. I'll help you with that. Naruto offered, stepping up beside her in front of the sink. Oh, no, you don't have to. Tsunami, you got a workload here fit for several hands rather than just the 2 you have. Naruto said. At least let me leave a clone or 2 with you to help if you think it'd trouble me. Tsunami bit her lip before smiling with an exasperate sigh, knowing Naruto would not let up. Just 1 clone is fine, thank you. Naruto nodded and made the hand sign for a clone. The clone appeared with a puff of smoke with a bright smile and got to dishwashing with Tsunami while Naruto went out to train like he first intended. He knew that even though he fought with 3 swords, each sword had its own ability and he wasn't going to find out what they were just by waiting. Naruto unsheathed all 3 katana and placed them up against a tree before untying his headband from his bicep and readying it over his head. He crossed his arms in thought for a moment or 2 and decided to use his shuriken guarded sword, left-hand sword, and crescent guarded sword, right-hand sword, at the same time. Over 30 different combination slashes later, he found his shuriken guarded sword had this sort of selective cutting ability he'd have to practice with. Like he could slash the sword through a row of 3 trees and he could choose which tree that one swipe could strike, the middle for example, without getting the others too. Something that could be very handy and more so in hostage situations. He found his crescent guarded sword can slash through 100 with 1 swipe. He'd have to be careful with that one. His guardless sword was another story entirely. He'd only thought about having the sword between his teeth and there it was in an instant, like when he sees an elite ninja and Enbu using the body flicker technique. Maybe returning to its wielder or master was the ability of his guardless sword, but Naruto couldn't be sure. Hours later, Naruto came in when everyone was getting dinner ready. As soon as the blonde was through the door, he fell to the floor in dead tired unconsciousness from all the training and discovering the secret of the shadow clones when Tazuna had said they were done for the day and all his clones dispelled at once several minchers earlier. The clone that decided to stay put after cleaning the dishes and help Tsunami make dinner dispelled a second before Naruto hit the floor. Kakashi was quick to catch the dish the clone had been carrying to the table before setting it down. Ibit flew onto Kakashi's head when Naruto fell unconscious only to go back into Naruto's hair when Kakashi brought the blonde upstairs to bed. The next morning, Naruto woke just as early as the day before and left to train again. Though, he hadn't really expected to run into Tsunami on the way out. Good morning, Naruto. She greeted a bit shyly, the tops of her cheeks pinkened a bit at his reply. Morning, is your ankle okay? Naruto asked, looking off to the side, too embarrassed to really look her in the eye at the moment. Oh, yes, thank you, again, for helping me, she said, looking at the floor embarrassedly though unable to hold back a shy smile. It was nothing really, Naruto said, putting his hands in his pockets, cheeks dusted with pink as he looked at Tsunami. She had looked up as well, neither could look away, for the moment. Then they both looked away, both their faces gone half red. Well, I gotta get to, training and, yeah. Naruto said all too quickly. I also need to start getting breakfast ready and, well, Tsunami said just as hurriedly. Rushing past each other with a quick goodbye, neither could really help thinking about the night before, the interaction between Tsunami and Naruto's clone.